Chapter 541. Furthermore, the fact that Lu Feng had a good relationship with the Federal University was also a good thing in their eyes. After all, the Federal University was one of the three most terrifying forces of the human race. Once the Federal University's hidden trump cards were revealed, the power displayed by the Federal University would be no less than the Lu family's. Lu Feng had the protection of these two terrifying forces, so his future path would be much smoother. In that case, you should go. Remember, safety is the most important thing. Lu Feng nodded his head gently and led Yuyo and Qingran outside. Before heading to the Federal University, Lu Feng had to make a trip back to the Cymbidium. After all, that was his home. He had already made an appointment with Li Tianlai. After contacting Li Tianlai, they would head to the Federal University together. However, when Lu Feng left, he didn't ask the Lu family's patriarch to tear open the void and send him over. He chose to use his own spaceship to leave slowly. Lu Feng could now travel through space. However, his power was limited, so the distance he could travel in one go wasn't too long. This time, he was bringing Yuyo and Qingran with him. With his current strength, it was unrealistic for him to bring someone with him for a long time. Furthermore, even if he used the Lu family's exclusive top-notch spaceship, it would take at least a month to travel from here to the Cymbidium. During this time, Lu Feng wanted to relax. Soon, the two of them received a top-notch spaceship from the Lu family's warehouse. Its level of luxury was unparalleled. After all, Lu Feng had done a lot of research on machinery. He could tell at a glance that this spaceship was much better than the top-notch spaceships used by the Federation. Sitting in the spaceship, one could continuously travel through space. Here, the degree of comfort was also very good. For the first 10 days, Lu Feng and Yu Qingran enjoyed their time together. Finally, on the 11th day, Lu Feng decided to have a showdown with Yu Qingran. He knew that Yu Qingran would definitely know about Mu Shuyan's matter. If he had to wait until the end to tell her, then he might as well tell her everything in advance. Looking at Lu Feng's hesitant appearance, the first one to laugh was Yu Qingran. She looked at Lu Feng with a playful smile and asked, "Lu Feng, are you going to talk about Mu Shuyan?" Lu Feng was stunned. He looked at Yu Qingran. He didn't know how she heard these things. Seeing Lu Feng's astonished appearance, Yu Qingran smiled. Once again, Lu Feng was touched and smiled. She gently walked to Lu Feng's side and gently grabbed Lu Feng's hand. Then, she gently leaned on Lu Feng's chest. "Lu Feng, an ancestor of the Lu family has already told me about these things." Lu Feng was silent. He was completely silent. Lu Feng knew that many ancestors of the Lu family didn't want him to be distracted by this matter. They specifically looked for Yu Qingran in advance. Seeing Lu Feng's silent appearance, Yu Qingran sighed softly. All her movements and sounds were so soft that Lu Feng's heart was slowly trembling. "You don't need to say any more. I understand everything. Actually, from the day you came to the bloodline of Emperor Yu for me, I can understand everything you did. I know that your memories have been sealed. That's why you came too late. I know that you have no memories of the past. You don't remember me at all. That's why you found a new lover. I know that all of this is not something you can control. Actually, I can understand all of this." Lu Feng gently hugged Yu Qingran. However, at this moment, his arms were constantly trembling. Lu Feng's heart was filled with a strange feeling. At this moment, he couldn't say a word. Lu Feng quietly enjoyed this tranquility. After a long time, he finally let out a long sigh. "I know that this is very unfair to you." She had suffered endless suffering. She had been betrayed by both her family and her lover. It was difficult for her to survive. However, he had forgotten about her and found someone else he liked. This was very unfair to Yu Qingran. Hearing this, Yu Qingran smiled indifferently. Lu Feng could clearly see that she really didn't care. "Actually, I know that you have also suffered a lot. In less than 2 years, you have reached where you are today. You have experienced countless life and death situations. You have been hunted by billions of races. You have faced countless shocking almighties. You have challenged your limits time and time again. You have been very tired, very hard. The old ancestor of the Lu family once told you Qingran everything about Lu Feng. However, after hearing this, Qingran didn't look very proud. The biggest fluctuation in her heart was a kind of pity. What she saw wasn't Lu Feng's glory, but Lu Feng's suffering. Actually, I know all of this. Your old ancestor once told me that your ambition in this life is to constantly become stronger. What you want is to surpass the primogenitor human emperor. Your madness has become the universe's legend. I'm aware of all of this. That was enough for him. Really, it is enough. This was what she had told him before. This was what he had promised her. Even though all of his memories were sealed by the supremacy of the other path. But he still instinctively remembered her request for him. He still didn't want to forget her. He still instinctively remembered everything she said. This is enough. Really, it is enough. Alright, let's not talk about these things. I don't care about Mu Shuyan. I just hope that she doesn't mind my existence. At this moment, Lu Feng's heart was burning. He had never felt as happy as he did now. This was a kind of surprise that couldn't be brought by an increase in strength. It was a kind of joy that surpassed any other kind of happiness. Lu Feng looked at Yu Qingran's delicate face and finally kissed her gently. According to Lu Feng's estimation, it would take at least a month to reach the Cymbidium from the human king planet. However, they had only used 25 days to get there. Lu Feng also understood that the Lu family's spaceship was too powerful. It was much more powerful than the Federation's top-grade spaceship. If it weren't for this, they would have taken at least 5 more days to reach the Federation. When this top-grade spaceship landed in the center of the Cymbidium interstellar spaceship, it caused a stir. Although there were many top-grade spaceships in the Federation, but most of them were for the use of the various large financial groups. And the ones that were publicly used were only between super life-bearing planet. A third-grade life-bearing planet like the Cymbidium was rarely seen in 100 years. When the spaceship landed, the entire interstellar spaceship center was in an uproar. Countless people scrambled to see it. After all, it was their first time seeing such a spaceship in real life. Apart from these people, the staff in the interstellar spaceship center were also busy. The VIP passageway was opened. Attendants stood at the side of the passageway, welcoming the arrival of the spaceship with the greatest ceremony. Therefore, when Lu Feng stepped out of the spaceship, he saw countless people scrambling to see him. Many staff members lined the passageway to welcome him. If it had been anyone else, they would have either felt uncomfortable or arrogant. However, Lu Feng was only slightly shocked. After a while, he completely recovered. He had seen far too many things now. The number of powerhouses watching any battle was greater than the total population of the Cymbidium. One had to know that when he had fought the Demon King, there had been at least a few billion people watching. And among these billions of people, even the weakest one had a martialist cultivation base. There were definitely no more than 100 martialists in the entire Cymbidium. Therefore, this kind of scene was nothing to Lu Feng. He watched as Lu Feng was surrounded by countless people. A martialist who was about to leave the Cymbidium frowned slightly. Previously, he had been invited by the Cymbidium government to come here. However, even when he had first arrived, the scene hadn't been so exaggerated. Now, someone else had actually appeared with such extravagance. Clearly, this martialist was very dissatisfied. His expression was very obvious, and the warriors around him who had accompanied him to leave could all see it. They were all high-level people in the Interstellar Spaceship Center, so they naturally knew the power that Lu Feng's spaceship represented. Therefore, they simply didn't care about this martialist's dissatisfaction. A soldier came to the martialist's side and said softly, "Sir, this spaceship is the Human King's Lu family's top-notch spaceship. When he heard this, the martialist's eyes narrowed slightly. A moment later, he fell silent. Then, he stood aside and waited for Lu Feng to pass first. At the moment, the martialist's heart was in a perilous situation. Unlike the staff of the Interstellar Spaceship Center, he understood everything very well. Naturally, he knew about the Human King's Lu family. He also knew what it meant to be able to ride the Human King's Lu family's top-notch spaceship. It's actually a direct descendant of the Human King's bloodline. Why has such a distinguished existence graced the Cymbidium with his presence? To be able to ride the Lu family's top-notch spaceship, one could only be a high-level member of the Human King's Lu family or a direct descendant of the Human King's Lu family. When he saw Lu Feng's face, he naturally knew that such a young existence like Lu Feng couldn't possibly be a high-level member of the Human King's Lu family. In that case, he could only be a direct descendant of the Human King's bloodline. The Human King's Lu family. That was the #1 bloodline in the world, and the Human King's Lu family was the #1 aristocratic family in the world. As a martialist, he naturally knew what the Human King's Lu family represented. This was the most frightening power in the human tribe that could stand on equal footing with the Federation government. Furthermore, the Human King's Lu family's direct descendant was extremely rare. Any one of them would be an existence that the head of a super-life-sustaining planet's government would personally welcome. However, such an existence had actually come to the Cymbidium, an unknown third-grade life-sustaining planet. This made him feel extremely puzzled. Forget it. This kind of peak existence is too far away from me. There's no point in thinking about this. As he thought about this, Lu Feng had already walked past him. It was a pity that Lu Feng didn't even look at him. He walked past him and disappeared at the end of the hallway. Chapter 542. After exiting the spaceship, Lu Feng's first stop was his home. Yuyo Qingran came out with Lu Feng to relax. She would soon return to the Lu family. After all, the Lu family's ancestor had promised to personally guide Yuyo Qingran. If Yuyo Qingran wanted to become a god in the future, she would have to cultivate diligently. She planned to spend some time with Lu Feng before returning to the Lu family to cultivate. Therefore, wherever Lu Feng went, she would naturally follow. Soon, the two of them finally arrived outside his own villa. At this moment, Lu Feng was filled with mixed feelings. Looking at the familiar scene, the place that carried Lu Feng's sealed memories and his childhood, he let out a long sigh. Qingran, when I left, I was just a weak existence. I wasn't even a high-level warrior. But now, when I return, I have the strength to slay a god. Everything is so slow, but also so fast. Although Lu Feng had only left for a little more than a year, if the time spent in the realm of time and the realm of time was added, it would be close to 10 years. Therefore, Lu Feng felt that time passed very slowly. However, to Lu Feng, everything happened as if it was yesterday. Therefore, everything was so fast that it felt like it was only a few days ago. Gently pulling Lu Feng's arm, Yuyo Qingran smiled. Lu Feng, you have to know that as a powerhouse, your future is bound to be bright and limitless. Your lifespan is much, much more than that of an ordinary person. At that time, the time spent cultivating would easily be calculated in hundreds of years. So, it's only a few years. It's normal. You don't have to care too much about it. Hearing this, Lu Feng nodded gently. In fact, Lu Feng was completely aware of this. He was just feeling a little strange for a moment, but he wasn't being overly emotional. Qingran, this is where I lived after leaving the Lu family. Apart from you, this is the place where all the joy of my childhood was concentrated. Looking at the villa in front of him, Lu Feng's heart seemed to have returned to the past. Unlike the Lu family, Lu Feng didn't have to worry about food or clothing in the Cymbidium villa. Most of the people he interacted with were ordinary people. With Lu Feng's family background and his parents' fake identities, he was already very satisfied with his life. He was already considered a person above the common people here. In addition, he didn't have many troubles here, so Lu Feng was really happy and happy. It could be said that this villa carried Lu Feng's childhood memories, except for Yuyo and Qingran. Qingran, come in. After saying this, Lu Feng reopened the door of the villa. Previously, before leaving home, Lu Feng had completely locked down the villa. In this way, except for himself, if anyone wanted to enter, they would have to resort to violence. This was also for safety reasons. After opening the door of the villa, Lu Feng stepped inside. Behind him, Yu and Qingran followed closely. Soon, the two appeared in the living room. Looking at the familiar surroundings, Lu Feng relaxed and smiled. In this familiar environment, he could feel more comfortable. He didn't have to act like he did outside. The house was basically still spotless. The cost of the villa was as high as hundreds of millions, so it was naturally well equipped. Not to mention a year, even if it took 10 or even 100 years, as long as there was still energy, this place would still be as clean as before. Sit down, Qingran. Lu Feng pointed at the luxurious water sofa and said to Yu. This water sofa was one of Lu Feng's favorite amenities in the past. After seeing Yu and Qingran sit down, Lu Feng turned and walked into the kitchen. He opened the door of the refrigerator, took a few bottles of drinks, and walked out. It had to be said that the benefits of the development of science and technology were endless. The refrigerator could reach the peak of ultra-low temperature and the strongest preservation technology, which could extend the shelf life of ordinary food by 10 times or even 100 times. The shelf life of these drinks was as long as a few years, plus the refrigeration technology, so Lu Feng didn't worry about the expiration of the drinks. After going back and forth in each room, Lu Feng finally returned to the living room. In the more than a year, Lu Feng had seen too many things. It could be said that he had really experienced hundreds of millions of life and death situations, and experienced innumerable pain and destruction. Of course, these were some of the bad experiences. In addition, Lu Feng also saw a lot of things. For example, the immortal palace of the Chaos King in the Tianyun system, the central building of the Alchemist Alliance, the last core area of the Massacre Abyss, and the altar in the deepest part of Gufang's star. These were all miracles of the universe, which made people look up to and admire them. Those things were more than 1 billion times more powerful than this villa. However, in Lu Feng's heart, his villa was the warmest place. It was the place that made him most reluctant to leave. In this villa, Lu Feng stayed for another night. It could be considered as a way to reminisce about his lost youth. The next day, he left with Yu and Qingran. This time, Lu Feng was going to the Cymbidium branch of the Federal University. When Lu Feng arrived, the Cymbidium branch was already on holiday. They had even been on holiday for a long time. About 2 months ago, when Lu Feng had just walked out of the battlefield, the Federal University was basically on holiday. After that, Lu Feng spent another month cultivating and rushed here in a month. 2 months had passed since then. Today, 2 months later, the Federal University was about to start its new semester. Lu Feng vaguely saw that many students had already arrived at the school. I didn't expect these students to be so hard-working, Lu Feng gave a long sigh. Hearing his sigh, Yu smiled mischievously. Yeah, they won't be like you, skipping classes all day. Yu already knew that Lu Feng was still a student of the Federal University. He was even a student of the General Hospital. Unfortunately, since becoming a student there, Lu Feng hadn't even attended a single day of classes. Yu knew this, so she found it funny and used it to laugh at Lu Feng. Lu Feng was a bit embarrassed, but he didn't say anything, because he knew this was the truth. When Lu Feng walked into the school gate, he was stopped again. The one who stopped him was the same security guard from before. When Lu Feng came here for the first time, he was also stopped by the security guard. At that time, he contacted Director Wan through the Sky Network and was let in. At that time, he had driven his own suspension car into the city. The security guard was still the same security guard. Lu Feng was still the same Lu Feng. Unfortunately, Lu Feng still remembered him, but the security guard didn't recognize Lu Feng anymore. This is the school area, no one is allowed to casually enter. Although Lu Feng was only 18 years old, his experience over the years gave him an aura of vicissitudes. Just this aura of vicissitudes made Lu Feng not look like a student at all. Hearing this, Lu Feng smiled. Slowly said, "You're still the same as before." The security guard was a bit surprised. "You know me before?" The security guard thought that his memory was pretty good. Because those who could come to the Federal University were either people with excellent grades or people with strong backgrounds. He didn't want to offend either of them. Therefore, everyone would try their best to remember it clearly. Only in this way would they not make any mistakes. But no matter how he looked, he couldn't recognize Lu Feng. So he was really confused. Lu Feng smiled. "A year and a half ago, I came here to report. At that time, I came a month late and drove a hover car. Do you still remember?" The security guard didn't say anything. He just went silent for a while. He was quietly thinking. Finally, he seemed to have thought of something. At this moment, his expression became somewhat strange. "You are that Lu Feng?" He looked at Lu Feng a few times, but couldn't connect Lu Feng with the Lu Feng of the past. Back then, Lu Feng was personally led in by Director Wan. Naturally, the security guard had to remember Lu Feng's mysterious background clearly. Unfortunately, the difference between the Lu Feng of the past and the present was too big. So big that even he, who thought that his memory was pretty good, couldn't confirm that the person in front of him was really that Lu Feng. "You are really Lu Feng?" After observing for a long time, he seemed to have vaguely seen a few similarities. So he asked uncertainly. Lu Feng, on the other hand, simply smiled. "It's the real deal. Besides, this time, I'm here to look for the principal. If it's an imposter. If I'm a fake, I'd be courting death." Hearing this, the security guard finally believed it a little. "Well then, I'll ask first. After all, I don't dare confirm your identity casually. If there's no problem, I'll let you in." Lu Feng shrugged helplessly. Although he was called an emperor, he wasn't arrogant and despotic. At times like this, he was very calm. Seeing Lu Feng's indifferent expression, the security guard dialed the Sky network of the Department of Political Education. He wanted to confirm whether someone was really here to see the principal. Seeing this, Yu Qingran, who was standing quietly beside Lu Feng, wanted to laugh. Seeing her expression, Lu Feng could only shrug helplessly. He hadn't expected this situation. When he entered the General Hospital, he had already erased all the certificates of the Federal University's Cymbidium branch. As for the certificate of the General Hospital, he hadn't reported it yet. Naturally, he didn't have it. Therefore, when facing the security guard just now, Lu Feng didn't even mention the identity certificate at all. At this moment, seeing Yu Qingran's smiling face, Lu Feng could only stand there helplessly. Chapter 543. 10 minutes later, the security guard finally connected to the Sky network of the Department of Political Education. After a few words, he came to Lu Feng's side with a strange expression. "Sir, I don't know why you're here, but I want to tell you that if you don't leave, I'll have to inform the guards." Just now, the security guard had sent Lu Feng's identity information to the Department of Political Education. Unfortunately, the Department of Political Education did not have any information about Lu Feng's identity. Moreover, the people from the Department of Political Education did not say that anyone was looking for the principal today. At this moment, he was certain that Lu Feng was not from this school. He probably had some ulterior motives, or he was just here to cause trouble. Lu Feng stood there helplessly. He did not say anything. He just opened the Sky network and dialed Li Tianlai's number. Li Tianlai was really good to Lu Feng. The moment he saw Lu Feng's number, He picked it up. In an instant, that familiar laughter came from the Sky Network again. "How is it, junior brother? How long will it take for you to come? I've been waiting for you. Ever since you became the champion of the Battle of the Kings, I've been waiting for you here every day." A month ago, Lu Feng had shocked the galaxy and fought against the Master of Six Paths. He had established the prestige of an era and almost ignited an immortal sacred site. Many existences in the universe had endless respect for him. Of course, Li Tianlai knew about it too. At that time, he was really shocked. When he first met Lu Feng, he was already at the peak of the second demigod realm. In the past year, with the help of the inheritance, he had finally entered the peak of the fourth demigod realm. The Dongru Emperor of the past was an existence of the Void Emperor. His power was equivalent to a peerless virtual king of the fifth ancient realm. With his inheritance, Li Tianlai would not have a problem ascending to godhood. However, that would still take a long time. At the very least, he shouldn't think too much about it in the next few decades. After all, it was too difficult to become a god. His current strength was already comparable to a peak deity, but Li Tianlai understood that his strength was really nothing in front of his junior brother. The Master of Six Dao was definitely an existence that stood at the pinnacle of existence. No one below the true god level could stand against him. However, after Lu Feng unleashed his full combat power, he was beaten to a level where he almost instantly withered away. From this, one could see just how terrifying Lu Feng's strength was. More than a year ago, when he met Lu Feng was just an ordinary youth. However, Lu Feng at that time only needed to release his own prestige in front of him to easily extinguish him countless times. But who would have thought that Lu Feng would be able to shock the world to such an extent in such a short period of time, while he was relying on the inheritance to make rapid progress? So much so that he had to look up to Lu Feng. Upon hearing this hearty laughter, Lu Feng's heart was filled with joy. He knew that he was about to meet his senior brother. "Senior brother, you must be joking. I also had some matters to attend to during this period, so I came a little late. After I was done, I came here directly." Li Tianlai nodded gently. He didn't care much about it. He knew that Lu Feng had just returned to the human race. The human king and the Lu family definitely had a lot of things to discuss with Lu Feng. Although the Federal University was Lu Feng's school and Dao Songtian was Lu Feng's teacher, Lu Feng was still a member of the Lu family. Returning to the Lu family first and reporting to the Lu family was naturally not a big deal. "Alright, junior brother, come in first. I will take you to the capital administrative planet in a while to meet teacher. It just so happens that I have a lot of things to ask teacher." Lu Feng nodded gently. However, a moment later, he revealed a slightly embarrassed expression. "Senior brother, I'll have to trouble you to talk to this security guard first. Otherwise, I really won't be able to enter. My previous school certificate seems to have been erased. As for the new certificate belonging to the General Hospital, it seems that it has not been activated because I haven't reported to the school. Therefore, I am now trapped at the entrance." Upon hearing Lu Feng's words, Li Tianlai was slightly stunned. Who was Lu Feng? He was an unparalleled existence. However, at this moment, he was trapped at his own door and could not enter. This was undoubtedly the biggest joke in the world. Of course, Li Tianlai only treated it as a joke. After all, given Lu Feng's current status and strength, he would not care too much about Lu Feng's current strength. "Alright, wait a moment. I will pass down the order." After saying this, Li Tianlai closed the Sky Network. At this moment, Lu Feng finally calmed down. He knew that Li Tianlai would take care of everything. As expected, the security guard's suspicious gaze did not last long. His Sky Network connector sent out a signal. This was a signal that someone was calling him. "Pick it up now. I think this is your principals." The security guard's expression was slightly respectful. A moment later, he opened the Sky Network connector. Li Tianlai was a godlike existence in the entire Cymbidium. Many people already knew his identity. He was a teacher from the General Hospital and a disciple of the principal of the Federal University, Dao Songtian. He was also a terrifying demigod. His identity was absolutely unparalleled in the entire human race, at least on the surface. Therefore, although Li Tianlai worked with them, in their hearts, Li Tianlai was a godlike existence. Indeed, after opening the Sky Network connector and seeing the name displayed on it, the security guard's respectful expression became even more obvious. He kept nodding his head at the Sky Network. His expression was unusually respectful. Finally, when everything was done, he closed the Sky Network gently. At this moment, he no longer looked at Lu Feng with the same suspicion as before. That number just now was Li Tianlai's. It could not be faked. Therefore, he was certain of Lu Feng's identity. He looked at Lu Feng with a slightly fearful expression. For a moment, he did not know what to say. Lu Feng did not care about this at all. This kind of ordinary person was destined to have no interaction with him. Besides, with his current status and identity, how could he blame an ordinary person? Lu Feng smiled gently and said, "Now, my identity is confirmed." The security guard nodded fearfully. Yes, Lu. Sir Lu, I was ignorant and offended you. Please don't take it to heart. Seeing the security guard's fearful expression, Lu Feng smiled gently. It's okay. What you did just now was not wrong. This kind of conscientiousness is how you should behave. How could I blame you? Also, there is no need to call me Sir Lu. I am just a student. You can just call me by my name. After saying this, Lu Feng pulled Yu Qingran's arm and walked directly into the school. Lu Feng knew that he and this security guard were destined to have no interaction in the future. He will be a security guard here for the rest of his life. His future is the vast galaxy era. Perhaps in the future, he will not be able to come here again. Therefore, after saying this, Lu Feng walked directly into the school. Looking at Lu Feng's back, the security guard's face was filled with all kinds of expressions. But in the end, these expressions turned into a kind of calmness. He turned around and returned to his post. When he first came here, even if he took the interschool bus, it would take 7 or 8 minutes to reach the main teaching building. But today's Lu Feng is not the same as before. Today's Lu Feng's strength is terrifying. If he wants to, he can travel through space at any time. In that case, the entire Cymbidium can be traversed by him in an instant. Although he did not travel through space, Lu Feng's speed is still very fast. If not for taking Yu Qingran to see the environment where he used to live, Lu Feng would have arrived at the destination in a few seconds. This time, Lu Feng spent nearly 10 minutes before finally arriving at the main teaching building. Looking at this familiar scene, Lu Feng gently smiled. He directly pulled Yu Qingran's arm and walked to the top floor. Before Lu Feng knocked on the door, Li Tianlai's office door opened. Lu Feng knows Li Tianlai's strength. Naturally, he will not show any surprise. In one step, he walked in. "Senior brother, I'm here." They did not speak too much because there is no need for useless pleasantries between them. Li Tianlai nodded with slight excitement. He turned around and took out a lot of precious drinks and placed them in front of Lu Feng. "Junior brother, you're finally here. If you didn't come, I'm afraid those old guys from the Federal University would nag me to death." Lu Feng knows who the old guys from the Federal University are referring to. They are the Federal University's ancient elders in the modern world. In terms of strength, they are at least at the level of gods. Of course, this modern world is hidden from the eyes of many Federal University students and ordinary people. These people's existences are incomparably terrifying. Of course, the most terrifying thing about them is not their strength, but their identity. Which one of these people didn't have countless disciples? Any one of them was now a famous figure in the world. Their strength was far from being measured by their own level. Senior brother, I haven't seen you for more than a year. You've become much stronger. Lu Feng is not hypocritical. He is speaking from the bottom of his heart. In more than a year, he went from second-level demigod to pinnacle demigod. With such speed, even the Emperor of Massacre would not be able to match it. One had to know that Li Tianlai was a psychic, not a martial artist. Psychic cultivators are much slower in terms of cultivation. As for Li Tianlai's terrifying improvement, it was probably inseparable from his inheritance. Li Tianlai smiled helplessly. Lu Feng, you're slapping me in the face. Although my speed is not bad, compared to yours, it is far too slow. Aren't you making fun of me by saying that? Lu Feng smiled and did not continue to explain. He thought that between him and Li Tianlai, there is no need to explain anything. Indeed, Li Tianlai's speed was really quite a bit slower compared to him. The two of them sat down and began to chat. This is the reason why you challenged the Yuyo clan, right? Li Tianlai directed the topic to Yuyo Qingran. The real reason why Lu Feng challenged the Yuyo clan was spread widely after his victory against the Master of Six Dao. Many people already know that the reason why Lu Feng challenged the Yuyo clan and even fought the Master of Six Dao was because of a girl. And from the looks of it, Li Tianlai naturally guessed it. Lu Feng smiled and looked at Yuyo Qingran. That's right, senior brother. The reason why I challenged the Lu clan and Yuyo clan is because of her. Her name is Yuyo Qingran. Li Tianlai nodded and looked at Yuyo Qingran with a slightly strange expression. Of course, Lu Feng completely grasped the strange expression on her face. He quickly guessed the reason and smiled. Senior brother, actually, I came to find you because I have something to ask. Senior brother, do you know where Shuyan is? Hearing Lu Feng mention Mu Shuyan's name, Li Tianlai was slightly surprised. However, looking at Yuyo Qingran's incomparably calm expression, he completely understood that Yuyo Qingran knew about Mu Shuyan's existence. Soon, Li Tianlai came to a realization. He knew that he worried too much about this matter. With Lu Feng's existence, how could he not handle this small matter? Chapter 544. Li Tianlai also understood that it was normal for a world-shaking existence like Lu Feng to have several wives. Moreover, Lu Feng had done everything for Yuyo Qingran. Any girl would be so touched that they would be willing to do anything for him. Therefore, Yuyo Qingran's expression remained the same even after knowing about Mu Shuyan's existence. After a moment of silence, Li Tianlai said directly, Actually, ever since you disappeared, Mu Shuyan has not gone to the Federal University. It's not just her. Even Su Wenchao and Qi Yunqing are the same. However, Qi Yunqing was taken away by the two of them when he was studying at the Federal University. A hint of nervousness appeared on Lu Feng's face. Even they did not know where Mu Shuyan had gone. This made Lu Feng a little nervous. After returning, Lu Feng had contacted the Mu family. However, the Mu family had replied that they did not know where Yuyo Qingran had gone. Of course, Lu Feng had already guessed this. After all, Mu Shuyan and the Mu family were not on good terms. It was normal that they did not know. However, now that everyone did not know, Lu Feng was moved and anxious. When he saw Lu Feng's expression, Li Tianlai was silent for a moment. However, after a moment he said, Actually, I have a guess as to where they went. They should have gone to look for you. They went to the foreign battlefield to look for you. Lu Feng was slightly stunned. Li Tianlai continued to explain. When Qi Yunqing disappeared, it was when the news of you starting the Battle of the Kings spread. Moreover, Qi Yunqing's reason for leaving was to gain experience. Based on their relationship with you and Su Wenchao's character, they should have left. I think that should be the case. At this moment, Lu Feng understood. There were many places that could block the Sky Network signal. However, the most obvious one was the foreign battlefield. The Outland battlefield was a completely independent spacetime. In the Outland battlefield, the heavenly network was completely unusable. That was probably why Lu Feng couldn't contact them after he came out. Lu Feng, don't worry. This time, they must have informed some of their clans before heading to the battlefield in the Outlands. Although the Su family wasn't a first-rate aristocratic family, the Su family wasn't a first-rate one. However, their existence was not inferior to that of a first-rate family. The members of their clan must have had powerful experts accompanying them on their journey. After all, Su Wenchao's position in the Lu family is the same as yours. Both of you are their hope. The Su family will never allow anything to happen to Su Wenchao. Lu Feng nodded gently, but his heart was still filled with worry. If it was in the past, with the Su family's almighty following him, the foreign battlefield would not be a big deal. But now this was the era of the War of the Kings. In this era of the War of the Kings, freakish geniuses ran amok. Many almighty monarchs had started to recover and become the guardians of these freakish geniuses. Therefore, in such an era, it was easy to die if one was not careful. Moreover, the foreign battlefield, because of Luo Yunyang, was where the battle of the monarchs would take place. There were more monstrous geniuses than ever before. It would be too dangerous there. There were so many non-humankind beings and so many independent forces. The existence of the humankind wasn't enough to protect everything. Therefore, Lu Feng was extremely anxious. In that case, senior brother, can you contact the Su family? I want to confirm this. After all, if they went to look for me, they definitely wouldn't be able to find me. Li Tianlai nodded gently. After opening the Sky Network and searching for some time, he finally found a way to contact an elder of the Su family. Without any hesitation, he dialed the Sky Network. The other side quickly picked up the call, and a three-dimensional shadow appeared in the void. Lu Feng knew that Li Tianlai had asked him to watch it so that he could know everything as soon as possible. Li Tianlai smiled faintly as he looked at the three-dimensional shadow. Elder Su Qing, long time no see, these were all pleasantries. Although Lu Feng often said such pleasantries, he really did not want to say such useless things now. Naturally, Li Tianlai could also see Lu Feng's anxiety. After greeting him, he went straight to the point. Elder Su Qing, I wonder if your young master Su Wenchao has gone to the foreign battlefield. It had to be said that Li Tianlai's question was rather direct. Su Qing was slightly taken aback. He really did not know why Li Tianlai had suddenly asked this. However, Su Qing did not answer directly. Instead, he asked, Teacher Li, I really don't know how to answer this sudden question. Su Wenchao's status in the Su family was the same as Lu Feng's. They had to protect Su Wenchao closely. Therefore, even if Li Tianlai came to ask, he would not say it directly. Li Tianlai knew that Lu Feng was really anxious. Therefore, he did not hesitate and explained everything directly. It's like this, Elder Su Qing. The person who asked this was not me, but the young master of the Lu family, Lu Feng. Su Qing was stunned for a moment. However, he quickly fell silent. Is it young master Lu Feng? Although Lu Feng's current reputation was still unknown to ordinary people, it was like thunder in the ears of the higher-ups. They naturally knew about the existence of the person who was known as the #1 person in the history of the Battle of the Kings. Moreover, as an elder of the Su family, Elder Su Qing also knew a little. That was, Lu Feng and their young master Su Wenchao were brothers who had an exceptionally good relationship. If it had been someone else who asked, Su Qing would not have answered. However, the person who asked this was Lu Feng, which made him hesitate. After a moment he said, Teacher Li, please wait a moment. Let me see if the family head knows. I will help you ask first. After saying this, the Sky Network was cut off. In fact, Li Tianlai knew that this so-called inquiry was not to ask about Su Wenchao's current location. Instead, it was to ask the family head of the Su family to see if he should answer. In less than 3 minutes, the Sky Network was connected again. I'm sorry, Teacher Li. I did not know the young master's location before, so I specially asked. Li Tianlai and Lu Feng both knew that this was just an excuse. However, in order to protect their family's monstrous talent, such an inquiry was necessary, so they did not feel displeased. So, Elder Su Qing, have you asked now? Su Qing smiled faintly and nodded. I just asked the family head, and he told me that the young master is indeed in the foreign battlefield now. He seems to be looking for young master Lu Feng. Besides him, there is also young master Lu Feng's girlfriend, Mu Shuyan, his classmate, Qi Yunqing, the young masters of the Hai and Zhao families, and the young master of the first-rate Lu family. At this moment, Lu Feng's hanging heart was slightly relieved. With so many young masters together, their safety should be guaranteed. Thank you, Elder. I wonder if you can inform the elders who are accompanying you that young master Lu Feng has returned. Tell them that they don't have to search anymore. Elder Su Qing smiled and continued, Teacher Li, don't worry. A month ago, when young master Lu Feng shocked the galaxy, we have already contacted the young master and the others through a secret method. They are very safe and have already begun to return from the foreign battlefield. They should be able to return in about a month's time. Hearing this, Lu Feng was completely relieved. Li Tianlai pondered for a moment and said directly, then inform them that when they return, they will go directly to the capital administrative planet. Young Master Lu Feng will be studying there for a period of time in the future. Su Qing naturally had no objections. After saying a few more words, he closed the Sky Network. Looking at Lu Feng's completely calm appearance, Li Tianlai smiled gently. You can rest assured now. Lu Feng also smiled and nodded. Okay, Lu Feng, you will set off with me in a while. Let's go directly to the capital administrative planet to see the teacher. The last time they went to the capital administrative planet, Lu Feng took Li Tianlai's personal spaceship. However, this time it was the other way around. Although Li Tianlai's personal spaceship was also very fast, there was still a certain gap between it and the spaceship given to Lu Feng by the Lu family. After all, only the direct descendants of the Lu family and the true higher-ups of the Lu family were qualified to take the spaceship that Lu Feng took. The higher-ups here were the higher-ups of the Lu family. Only people who occupied a very important position in the human monarch's Lu family could take the spaceship. Therefore, regardless of whether it was speed or safety, this spaceship far surpassed Li Tianlai's personal spaceship. If they took Li Tianlai's personal spaceship, it would take at least 10 days. However, if they took Lu Feng's spaceship, it would only take 3 days. After all, Li Tianlai's spaceship was built exclusively for him. There was a big gap between it and a top-notch spaceship. Compared to Lu Feng's personal spaceship, it was even worse. 3 days later, the three of them appeared at the spaceship center of the capital administrative planet. This was the spaceship center of Paradise City. It was a very famous spaceship center in the entire Federation. Ordinary people did not have any special privileges here, but Li Tianlai was different. This was because this was Paradise City. It could be said that Paradise City was the city of the Federal University. As the disciple of Dao Songtian, Li Tianlai naturally had many privileges that others could not imagine. In fact, even without Li Tianlai's special privileges, Lu Feng could easily have an exclusive parking spot. After all, even the reception staff of the Cymbidium could tell that this was the Lu family's top-notch spaceship. Therefore, the staff of the spaceship center of a large city like Paradise City were naturally even more familiar with it. Therefore, when they saw Lu Feng's spaceship, the staff of the spaceship center had already made way for Lu Feng to park. Soon, Lu Feng's personal spaceship landed in the spaceship center of Paradise City. What greeted him was a grander scene than the one at the Cymbidium spaceship center. Unlike the Cymbidium, the staff of the spaceship center only knew that the Lu family was the #1 family in the Federation. However, they did not know how terrifying this #1 family was. After all, they were ordinary people and had limited contact with people of a certain level. However, unlike them, most of the people at the spaceship center of Paradise City knew about the level of martialists. They naturally knew what the Lu family represented. This was definitely not an ordinary aristocratic family. In the entire Federation, this was a peak power comparable to the Federation government. It was a terrifying existence that even the peak overlord races in the universe did not dare to provoke. The direct descendants of the Lu family were extremely respected. Especially after the recent series of big moves by the Lu family, Lu Feng's reputation had been pushed to an unusually high position. Therefore, these people were extremely respectful towards Lu Feng's arrival. Li Tianlai did not care much about this, because he knew that this was the treatment that the Lu family deserved. He turned his head to look at Lu Feng with a relaxed smile. "Junior brother, it seems like I will have to follow you wherever I go in the future. I'm afraid that I can only enjoy this kind of treatment when I'm with you." When he heard this, Lu Feng smiled slightly. "Senior brother, I believe that you will be able to take that step very soon. As long as you become a divine master, you will still be a respected existence in the entire universe, even among the peak overlord races." Chapter 545. There was nothing wrong with what Lu Feng said. The existence of God spirits was an extremely noble existence in the universe. A God-tier master was equivalent to a true God. Therefore, as long as Li Tianlai's identity was exposed, he would be able to enjoy the most noble treatment in any race, unless he was from a race that had an absolute hatred for the human race. Li Tianlai laughed but didn't deny anything, because he knew that what Lu Feng said was completely correct. "All right, junior brother. Come with me to see teacher first. I've already informed him before we came. I think he's waiting for us in his office now. As for other things, we'll talk about them after you meet teacher." Lu Feng nodded slightly and followed Li Tianlai closely. Lu Feng and the others followed the familiar path and soon arrived at the Federal University's headquarters. As far as the eye could see, it was still the familiar sparring arena. This was a characteristic of the Federal University. It was absolutely impossible to see these things in other schools. There were still a few days before the start of the semester, so many students had already arrived. Most of them had already started fighting in the ring to verify their achievements during the holiday. When he saw Lu Feng's slightly absent-minded expression, Li Tianlai chuckled and asked, "What are you thinking about, junior brother?" Lu Feng hesitated for a moment before he said, "Senior brother, I'm thinking that if I didn't go to the Mu family to play, then perhaps I would be like these students right now, competing and learning from each other." Li Tianlai was slightly stunned. After a moment of silence, he said, "Who can say for sure? Who could have predicted what happened back then? After all, this was fate's arrangement. We are powerless to resist fate." Lu Feng chuckled and didn't say anything else. Other people's futures could be predicted. As long as they entered an unimaginable realm, they could use supreme secret techniques and countless resources to temporarily enter the long river of time and see a person's fate. However, these were all others. He, Lu Feng, was different from others. From the moment he set foot on the path, he had completely shattered the shackles of fate. There were no longer any shackles of fate in his life. Therefore, Lu Feng was the most special existence in the world. In the endless space-time, except for the 3 sovereigns and 5 emperors who had already been annihilated, except for the legendary Shakyamuni Buddha who had created the era of Buddhist civilization, and except for the current human king, there was no one else who could compare to Lu Feng. Perhaps, fate is something that no one can predict. Hearing Lu Feng's words, Li Tianlai was slightly taken aback, but he quickly smiled. He knew that Lu Feng had his own ideas. The thoughts of such taboo kings were unimaginable to ordinary people. Soon, the hover car arrived at the main building. Lu Feng and the other 2 got out of the car one by one. Lu Feng recognized the towering building in front of him. Li Tianlai had already told him about its history. Seeing that Lu Feng was still slightly absent-minded, Li Tianlai smiled again. He also looked at the towering building. Once upon a time I was like you. Every time I came here, I would be shocked by it. However, as the number of times I came here increased, and as I have been a teacher here for decades, this feeling has gradually faded. However, its existence is indeed great. What it has witnessed is the bloody and illustrious years of the human race, the unremitting rise of the human race, and the supreme proof of the path of Psyche Masters. This was the divine brilliance in front of him. The divine brilliance was the highest artifact that the divine brilliance heavenly emperor had condensed. Legend had it that it had entered the peak of grade 11. A grade 11 artifact. In fact, the divine brilliance heavenly emperor's true power of power had already entered the realm of life and death quasi-emperor. Combined with this divine brilliance, his power of power is absolutely unparalleled in the world. It's a pity that he faced countless opponents. He had to fight against countless opponents. It's sad and lamentable that a peerless heavenly emperor, the greatest existence in the history of Psyche Masters who was closest to the true eternal divine emperor, fell in the endless collisions just like that. The life of the divine brilliance heavenly emperor was the life of a supreme legend. He was even more revered and praised than the other two celestial emperors. Lu Feng nodded gently. Actually, junior brother, you will definitely be such a person in the future. The future hope of the human race rests on your body. You are the Taboo King. The Taboo King is a supreme existence that can reach the level of the human king. Your greatness is the only one in all of history. I firmly believe that in the future, you will definitely surpass the divine brilliance heavenly emperor and reach the level of your ancestor, the human king. Li Tianlai had witnessed Lu Feng's rise time and time again. He had witnessed Lu Feng's crazy extreme battles time and time again. He had always had unimaginable confidence in Lu Feng. He firmly believed that Lu Feng's future would definitely be unparalleled glory and splendor. Nothing could compare to it. Lu Feng smiled gently but didn't say anything else. His goal might have been to surpass the human king in the past. However, from the moment he stepped onto this path, he had already changed completely. Lu Feng's current goal was to surpass himself. He no longer regarded the human king as his goal. My future? Actually, my future has always been the name of my cultivation technique. My future has always been supremacy. The few of them walked straight up. Lu Feng wanted to meet his teacher, Dao Songtian. Lu Feng was full of respect for Dao Songtian. After all, this was the first teacher he had acknowledged. This was a great teacher who had truly helped him countless times. It could be said that the reason Lu Feng had been able to reach where he was today was inseparable from Dao Songtian. In Lu Feng's heart, Dao Songtian's position was unshakable. Meeting Dao Songtian this time was something that Lu Feng had wanted to do for a long time. After all, so many accidents had happened in the past. During this time, he had never contacted Dao Songtian. This was undoubtedly very unfair to Dao Songtian, who was always concerned about Lu Feng's teacher. Lu Feng, teacher Dao Songtian has been very concerned about you ever since you disappeared and appeared in the foreign battlefield. It could be said that he has already used all the resources that he can use. This time, you should really thank teacher properly. Lu Feng nodded his head gently. Although he didn't say anything, he understood everything in his heart. Vaguely, Lu Feng thought of the illusionary emperor from the Federal University that he saw outside the Great Wilderness Totem Palace. He still remembered everything that the illusionary emperor said. Lu Feng knew that Li Tianlai wasn't saying anything good about Dao Songtian. It was because Dao Songtian had really helped him in this way. Alright, when you meet teacher later, if teacher has something to say, don't hide it. Although I know that you have a lot of secrets, teacher isn't that kind of person. But I'm not that kind of person. If you really have some secrets that you can't tell me, I won't ask you. Lu Feng smiled gently. Although there are some things that I really can't tell, teacher. However, there are many other things that I can say clearly. Teacher is good to me, I know, I understand. I know, I understand. Therefore, if it doesn't involve too much, I will tell teacher everything. Li Tianlai could hear the meaning behind the last 6 words. He smiled. It was a happy and relieved smile. All right, let's go in. Teacher already knows that we are here. Dao Songtian was an illusionary emperor. It would be easy for an illusionary emperor to monitor a super life-sustaining planet. Given how much he valued Lu Feng, Dao Songtian would have already known when Lu Feng had just arrived at the capital administrative planet. Slowly, the door to the room opened. Lu Feng finally saw his teacher. In one step, he was already in front of Dao Songtian's table. Lu Feng smiled when he saw this young but very kind figure. It was a genuine smile. In an instant, he actually half-knelt in front of Dao Songtian. Teacher, I am back, teacher, I'm back. I'm finally alive again. I'm back by your side. Even in front of the great ancestor of the Lu clan, Lu Feng only bowed. However, in front of Dao Songtian, Lu Feng half-knelt respectfully. This undoubtedly showed Lu Feng's feelings for him. One had to know that Lu Feng would only kneel in front of his parents. Dao Songtian's face flashed with excitement when he saw Lu Feng's excited figure. Of course, it was just a fleeting expression. However, everyone saw it. Even Lu Feng saw it clearly. In the next moment, Dao Songtian waved his arm and lifted Lu Feng up. Child, you are finally back, child. In Dao Songtian's eyes, Lu Feng was a child. Lu Feng gently, heavily, and deeply nodded. Lu Feng and Dao Songtian stayed for nearly 4 hours. During this time, Yuyo and Qingran left together with Li Tianlai. She knew that what Lu Feng wanted the most right now was to be alone with Dao Songtian. Therefore, she wisely chose to leave. During these 4 hours, Lu Feng didn't ask anything about cultivation. Between him and Dao Songtian, it was basically Lu Feng talking and Dao Songtian listening. Lu Feng didn't hide anything about the King of Chaos from Dao Songtian. When Dao Songtian heard this, he was extremely shocked. After all, he also knew that the Divine King of Chaos had fought a decisive battle with the peerless Divine King of the foreign race. However, he never expected that the peerless Divine King of the foreign race would actually be his martial Dao incarnation. The Divine King of Chaos's martial Dao incarnation wasn't the Chain of Chaos, but the King of Chaos, his martial Dao incarnation in human form. Chapter 546. No wonder the Chaos Divine King's martial Dao incarnation was so weak. Like the Yellow Springs Divine King, he relied on his martial Dao incarnation to enter the Divine King's supreme realm. His martial Dao incarnation, the Chain of Chaos, was actually so much weaker than the Yellow Springs Monument. So, the Divine King of Chaos' true martial Dao incarnation was actually the King of Chaos. I have to say that the Divine King of Chaos is really the most powerful Supreme Realm Supreme in the history of the human race apart from the Human King, the First Divine King, and the Emperor Divine King. Dao Songtian's exclamation was reasonable, because the Divine King of Chaos only relied on the Chain of Chaos, which didn't show any martial Dao incarnation, to suppress the heavenly Dao race's Overlord of Time to the point that he couldn't even raise his head. One could imagine that if the King of Chaos appeared, the Divine King of Chaos at that time might even have the matchless power to kill the heavenly Dao race's Overlord of Time. However, this King of Chaos was actually able to betray his master. This is really incomparably shocking. I just don't know who that existence that awakened the King of Chaos is. As the principal of the Federal University, as the pinnacle figure of the entire human race, Dao Songtian knew a lot of things that others didn't know. Since the rise of the human race, it has always been filled with endless schemes. Although the Divine King's Supreme Realm's ultimate evil curse has always existed, the human race was the race that suffered the most. A long time ago, the Divine King of the human race had already sensed the existence of the conspiracy. But who would have thought that this conspiracy would be able to plot against so many peerless divine kings? Dao Songtian sighed slightly. Although he had already entered the Void Emperor realm, he was still powerless when it came to these matters. After all, according to the rumors, even the primogenitor human king didn't escape from this curse. Actually, teacher, traces of my primogenitor human king have appeared before. That was in a battlefield in the outer realm. That battlefield is the battlefield of an epoch. In this battlefield, there was once an existence wearing the Divine King's battle armor that attacked our primogenitor human king. Although I don't know what the final outcome was, the sniping he received was real. After I returned this time, the Lu family's ancestor seemed to have appeared. He's deciphering the restrictions of the Outworld battlefield and is preparing to personally enter the Outworld battlefield to investigate the truth. Dao Songtian nodded gently. The progenitor of the Lu family was a supreme existence of the heretical path. Apart from the fact that he was unable to suppress destiny, he was actually not much different from the Divine King in this era where the Divine King had met a tragic end. If it's the first ancestor of the Lu family, then we might be able to find some clues. However, the deepest truth is very, very difficult. One had to know that countless divine kings had perished. When they had been alive, they had suppressed destiny and possessed unlimited power. Even so, they had not been able to find out the slightest bit of the truth. Now that they were only supreme existences of the heretical path, it was even more impossible. After all, the power of a supreme power of the heretical path was only equivalent to a first-level divine king mythological domain existence. Lu Feng nodded gently. He had thought of this as well. Even so, after receiving news of the primogenitor human king, many members of the Lu family could not help but want to go and check it out. Next, Lu Feng told Dao Songtian a lot about his own experiences. Although Dao Songtian understood most of the things he said, Lu Feng did not know much about them. However, Dao Songtian was still very happy to hear this. After all of this was real. It had all come from Lu Feng's mouth. In the end, Lu Feng talked about everything that had happened in the Great Wilderness Totem. Dao Songtian had no way of knowing everything that had happened. After all, only Lu Feng and the 31st Prince had truly experienced everything. Furthermore, the 31st Prince had not reached the end. Therefore, no one else knew about everything that had happened. One had to know that the existence of the Great Wilderness Totem was a peerless and terrifying pinnacle grade 12 weapon that could directly face the great calamity of the universe. After Lu Feng spoke about everything without holding anything back, Dao Songtian was also endlessly shocked. The existence of a grade 12 weapon and the terrifying sacred monument that could cause the universe to be buried with it were definitely things that would shock the universe. Of course, among these countless shocking things, there were two things that really shocked Dao Songtian the most. Dao Songtian was filled with endless shock as he looked at Lu Feng. There was a kind of unconcealable fear in his eyes. You said that you have already jumped off the path? When he had first arrived, Dao Songtian had already sensed Lu Feng's strangeness. As a person who had entered the Dao, logically speaking, he should have been able to easily sense Lu Feng's aura. After all, that had been the case in the past. However, this time, he could not sense it at all. Previously, he had guessed that the ancestors of the Lu family had used heaven-defying means to conceal Lu Feng's aura as a person who had entered the Dao in order to protect Lu Feng. After all, an alien supremacy was also a supreme-level existence. They were omnipotent, so they should be able to do this as well. However, Dao Songtian had never imagined that Lu Feng's aura had not been concealed. Instead, he had simply jumped off the path. Lu Feng, what do you want me to say? Throughout the countless epochs since ancient times, apart from the primordial immortal demon era, there have only been a handful of people who have truly walked out of the path. Apart from those mythical existences, who else could have done it? Even the overlords of the epochs could not have done it. But you actually did it. You actually did it when you just stepped onto the path. You should know that even the ancestors of the human monarchs only surpassed it after perfecting the path. However, you completed it so much earlier. I never imagined that my youngest disciple would actually be the first person since ancient times. You are the first person that even the human monarchs cannot compare to. Lu Feng felt a little embarrassed when he heard these praises. He only smiled faintly and did not say anything else. After a while, Dao Songtian fell silent, as if he was thinking about something. After a while, he finally opened his mouth slowly. Lu Feng, if you hadn't said it, I would never have believed that there was actually an ultimate immortal technique that surpassed the 3 ultimate immortal techniques in the current universe. An immortal technique that can annihilate an entire universe is worthy of its ultimate name. It is worthy of being a terrifying existence that can bury an entire universe with it. 1 billion mortal worlds, 1 billion immortals. I really want to see its most powerful moment one day. I want to see its most glorious magnificence. What a telekinesis master hoped to see the most was a powerful telekinesis master and the most terrifying immortal technique. There was no doubt that the 1 billion mortal worlds, 1 billion immortals, was an existence that surpassed everything else in Dao Songtian's heart. Lu Feng felt slightly apologetic. I'm sorry, teacher. The current me is simply unable to unleash this invincible power. Furthermore, this immortal technique exists in my mind. I simply can't say it out loud. Dao Songtian waved his hand gently. Only those who are fated will know about the divine object of the universe. Since even the divine king couldn't succeed, only you could. This proves that in the current universe, only you are the most suitable one. You are the one who is truly destined to be with me. Lu Feng fell silent. In fact, this attitude was undoubtedly a tacit agreement. Indeed, there was one more thing he hadn't told Dao Songtian. That was, only he could unleash the 1 billion mortal worlds, 1 billion immortals. Even if he completely recorded the true technique, no one would be able to unleash it. Even a supreme ruler like the primogenitor human monarch would not be able to do so. This was because the true existence of the 1 billion mortal worlds and 1 billion immortals should be the 1 billion mortal worlds and 1 billion immortals. The 1 billion mortal worlds was a realm, while the 1 billion immortals was on another level. However, the 1 billion mortal worlds and 1 billion immortals needed to be unleashed at the same time in order to truly unleash its power. If it was unleashed individually, its power would be reduced by more than 10 times. In other words, the only person in the universe who could truly unleash the 1 billion mortal worlds and 1 billion immortals was an existence with 2 souls. However, it was a pity that having 2 souls was a supreme ability, and only the taboo monarch could possess such a supreme ability. Lu Feng was the only taboo monarch who possessed the supreme ability of 2 souls in the current era, or even in the endless eras. Therefore, the 1 billion mortal worlds and 1 billion immortals was destined to be Lu Feng's invincible immortal technique. It was the ultimate immortal technique. Of course, Lu Feng didn't say this out loud. This was because it would seem like an excuse if he said it out loud. Alright, Lu Feng. Do you have any plans for the future? This was what Dao Songtian was most concerned about. The speed of your advancement is really too fast. Although your cultivation has been consolidated, you haven't improved enough in other aspects. You have to know that things like knowledge are more useful in the future. You have only cultivated for such a short period of time, yet your strength has increased so much. In this case, your knowledge simply can't keep up with your cultivation. In fact, even without Dao Songtian explaining it, Lu Feng already knew about this. Hearing this, Lu Feng already understood Dao Songtian's plan. Of course, Lu Feng had the same idea as Dao Songtian. He smiled and said directly, "Teacher, I actually have the same idea. Therefore, in the future, I hope to stay in the university to study. This way, I can completely consolidate all the things I lack." Dao Songtian smiled and nodded gently. Lu Feng's current cultivation had reached the true strongest realm of the younger generation. The current Lu Feng's battle strength below the true God realm was enough to be invincible in the current era. Therefore, he didn't need to frantically improve his cultivation. Moreover, he had already jumped out of the path, so he wasn't afraid of being found by immortal kings. Therefore, compared to continuing to improve his cultivation and making his foundation unstable, consolidating his knowledge was the most important thing right now. Let Tian Lai accompany you to report. In this case, starting from the next semester, you can follow and learn for a period of time. When I am free, I will impart knowledge to you alone. Lu Feng had no objections to Dao Songtian's arrangement, although classes were simply a waste of time for him. However, there were only a few days of classes in a week, so he could afford to waste time. Moreover, Lu Feng also wanted to relax. He also wanted to experience a peaceful life without constant danger and countless pursuits. "Okay, teacher, then I will have to trouble teacher for this period of time." Dao Songtian smiled and didn't say anything. When he walked out of the door, the person who appeared in front of Lu Feng was Li Tianlai. When Lu Feng left, Dao Songtian had already notified Li Tianlai. "Junior brother, teacher has already told me. I will bring you to the Academic Affairs office in a moment to report. At the same time, I will arrange your class." This was something that Lu Feng had to do. If he went alone, it would be very troublesome. However, with Li Tianlai, it would be much more convenient. After all, Li Tianlai had been a teacher in the main school for a long time. In addition to his identity as Dao Songtian's disciple, it would be very easy to get everything done. Lu Feng smiled gently. "Thank you, senior brother. After we are done, I will treat senior brother to a good meal. Consider it as fulfilling our agreement." Chapter 547. Once upon a time, Lu Feng and Li Tianlai had an agreement that Lu Feng would treat Li Tianlai to a meal. However, the agreement was to be held on the Cymbidium. Unfortunately, Lu Feng did not fulfill his promise due to some reasons. This time, it was to make up for their previous agreement. Li Tianlai smiled gently. "All right then. Although it is not on the Cymbidium, I have nothing to be picky about. After all, who can easily eat at an emperor's banquet?" Although Lu Feng was far from reaching the realm of great success, his status in the current era was still incomparably honorable. To be honest, he was on an equal footing with the Divine King. After all, the evildoers of the new era were definitely on the same level as the Divine King. A taboo king like Lu Feng was in existence one level higher than the Divine King. His existence was incomparably terrifying. The future supreme, the Divine King, was nothing difficult for him. According to those records, as long as Lu Feng did not fall, he would be within reach of the Overlord of the new era. Therefore, although his current strength was not comparable to the Divine King, he would surpass the supreme existence of the universe in the future. It was naturally an incomparable honor to be treated by such an honorable existence. Of course, Lu Feng knew that Li Tianlai was only joking. Although Lu Feng was an emperor, this emperor was not the kind of emperor in the mortal world who commanded the world. His emperor was the emperor of the universe. Lu Feng was still the same Lu Feng to his family and friends. "Senior brother, you must be joking. No matter when, as long as you think of it, just let me know. I, Lu Feng, will definitely not dare to disobey you." The two laughed and did not say anything else. The Academic Affairs office was located in the middle of this huge building. In the headquarters there were about 300,000 people at each level. The total number of students in the Federal University had reached a terrifying number of 1.2 million. Although this number seemed to be a lot, when it was averaged out across the entire human race, it was very little. After all, the human population was more than 1 trillion. In the past, Li Tianlai worked in the Academic Affairs Office, so he was familiar with the place. Soon, they arrived at the office of the Academic Affairs Office. At this moment, there were still a few days before the start of the school term, so the teachers of the Academic Affairs Office had basically all arrived. When Li Tianlai casually pushed open the door and walked in, many people were slightly stunned. After all, most of the people who came here first had to ask for instructions. There were very few people who came in directly like Li Tianlai. However, when they saw that the person who came was Li Tianlai, they all reacted. Bursts of laughter could be heard continuously. Lu Feng could tell that these people had a good relationship with Li Tianlai. Although these expressions were a little exaggerated and overly flattering and happy, the feelings in them were not fake. Seeing these people running around Li Tianlai, Lu Feng was slightly stunned. However, he quickly reacted. With his current experience, Lu Feng naturally understood everything. Although Li Tianlai was only a teacher, his status was incomparably honorable. He was a peak demigod. This was enough to make anyone have to look up to him. Furthermore, Li Tianlai was Dao Songtian's teacher. Who was Dao Songtian? He was the headmaster of the Federal University. He was a person who held the highest authority in the Federal University. In addition, Dao Songtian was the Void Emperor. Everyone had to treat him with the utmost respect. As for his disciple, these people naturally had to curry favor with him. After greeting these people with a smile, Li Tianlai finally pushed Lu Feng over and walked into the office of the Director of Political Education. He looked at the Director of Political Education in front of him and said directly, "Director Zhang, this is my junior brother. He was specially recruited a year ago. However, due to some reasons, he was absent for a year. Today, he is finally back. Therefore, I hope that you can make the proper arrangements." Director Zhang looked at Lu Feng with slight astonishment. If an ordinary student was absent for a year, even if he was a specially recruited student, it would be impossible for him to be recruited by the main institute. After all, the main institute was not like the other institute. Those who could enter the Federal University were all true geniuses. Although the specially recruited students were all geniuses among geniuses, the Federal University never lacked geniuses. If it was late, it was late. If it was missed, it was missed. The Federal University had never violated the rules for a mere genius. Of course, if it was a monstrous genius, it would be a different story. However, Lu Feng was clearly not included in any of them. The reason why Director Zhang was shocked was not because Lu Feng was late for a year, but because of Li Tianlai's words. He called Lu Feng his junior brother. There was probably no one in the political education department who did not know who Li Tianlai's teacher was. If Li Tianlai called him his junior brother, then he must be that person's disciple. Such an identity was incomparably honorable, incomparably honorable. Looking at Lu Feng, Director Zhang's face was brimming with incomparable enthusiasm. He extended his hand and gestured for Lu Feng to sit down. "This student, please sit down." As he spoke, 2 chairs were brought over and placed behind Lu Feng and Li Tianlai. Lu Feng did not have any reservations and sat down directly. "May I know your name? Let me check the file first before assigning you a specific position." Director Zhang had already opened the Sky Network and pulled up the file. Lu Feng smiled gently and said, "Director Zhang, my name is Lu Feng." Director Zhang nodded gently. He did not turn his head from looking at the file. However, after a moment, he seemed to stiffen. Director Zhang turned his head with difficulty to look at Lu Feng. He asked with a hint of suspicion, "You are Lu Feng?" Lu Feng only smiled when he heard Director Zhang's slightly hoarse tone. Yes, Director Zhang. I am Lu Feng. Director Zhang was silent for a moment before looking at Lu Feng again. Are you the supreme existence in the recent rumors, Emperor Lu Feng? There were trillions of people in the Federation, and Lu Feng's name was not that special. Director Zhang had been able to guess that Lu Feng was the emperor, not because he was amazing, but because his brain was good. Being able to be accompanied by Li Tianlai personally, being able to become Dao Songtian's disciple, and being called Lu Feng, any one of these three conditions was not that shocking. However, when these three conditions appeared on the same person at the same time, things were not that simple anymore. At that moment, the image of Lu Feng appeared in Director Zhang's mind. It was the Emperor Lu Feng. Lu Feng was not a pretentious person. If he came here, his identity would be known by others sooner or later. Moreover, Lu Feng had no intention of hiding his identity. He smiled faintly and nodded. I am Lu Feng from the Lu family. I am the Emperor Lu Feng. Lu Feng had never been afraid to admit anything. He had never been overly hypocritical. He was the Emperor Lu Feng. The Emperor would never be hypocritical, as there was no existence worth being hypocritical about. Director Zhang took a deep breath as his whole body trembled slightly. He was not afraid, but excited. He was the director of the Federal University's General Hospital and a terrifying third-stage demigod. He naturally knew about Lu Feng. Although he did not know much about the legend of Lu Feng, he still knew a little about him. It was because of this that he couldn't face Lu Feng calmly. Lu Feng. Student Lu Feng. I never thought that you would be the one reporting. Director Zhang's face was flushed red. If it was Lu Feng, not to mention being absent for a year, even if he was late or deliberately absent for a year, or even 100 years, as long as he came back, the Federal University would welcome him warmly. After all, he was the publicly recognized #1 person among the younger generation. Director Zhang did not know what the Taboo King was, nor had he heard of any legends about it. However, he knew that Lu Feng was the publicly recognized #1 monster in the world. If such a person could come to the Federal University, it would definitely cause a huge commotion. After a moment of excitement, Director Zhang finally calmed down. He took a few deep breaths and finally turned his attention to the information. In just a few seconds, he found Lu Feng's file among the millions of files. Director Zhang took out Lu Feng's file and looked at it. Lu Feng, you should be a first-year special enrollment student. However, you are late by a year. This means that when you enter the university, you can be a first-year student or a second-year student. I don't know. What do you plan to do? Logically speaking, Lu Feng should be a first-year student. After all, he was absent for a year, so that year's classes could be considered behind. This was the General Hospital. The courses of the General Hospital could not be compared to those of the other branches. Being absent for a year was definitely not easy to make up for. However, Lu Feng's identity was too special. With Lu Feng's identity, strength, and knowledge, even if he graduated now, no one would say anything, let alone a year of classes. Because Lu Feng had such strength. Before coming, Lu Feng had already thought about it, so he said without hesitation, "Then, put me in the second-year class. According to the class I assigned at the beginning, just directly assign me." When he was first assigned to the class, he was in the same class as Mu Xueyan and Su Wenchao. Lu Feng was also happy to be in the same class as them. Director Zhang nodded lightly. He just did everything casually, and everything was already done. All right. I have already made the arrangements for you. When school starts in 4 days, directly enter the second-year specially recruited psychic class to study. I will explain it to the teacher in charge of the class later. Now, do you have any questions, Lu Feng? Lu Feng thought for a moment and found that there were no more questions, so he shook his head lightly. Then, I will have to trouble you again, Director Zhang. Lu Feng stood up with a smile and said to Director Zhang. At this moment, Director Zhang was not sitting in his original seat. When Lu Feng stood up, he also stood up. He personally walked Lu Feng out of the door. When Lu Feng's figure completely disappeared from sight, Director Zhang finally let out a long sigh of relief. Looking at Lu Feng's disappearing figure, a strange smile appeared on Director Zhang's face. He slowly muttered to himself. There is still more than a month before the tri-campus tournament. I really want to see the excitement in the eyes of those opponents when they know that they are going to face the number one person of the younger generation. Chapter 548. Walking out of the school building, Lu Feng saw Yu Qingran at a glance. Yu Qingran also saw Lu Feng at a glance. After a joyful smile, he went directly to Lu Feng's side. Is everything done, Lu Feng? Lu Feng nodded gently and pulled Yu Qingran's arm without hesitation. Qingran, I will be studying here for a while. Why don't I ask the teacher to help you get in as well? To become a student of the Federal University, the conditions were undoubtedly harsh to the extreme. However, this was nothing compared to what Lu Fenglai said. Not to mention that he was just an ordinary student, even if he was a specially recruited student, it was nothing. After all, he, Lu Feng, was worth it. But hearing this, Yu Qingran shook her head gently. Lu Feng, I have been happy enough these days. I want to wait for you to start school before returning to the Lu family. Hearing this, Lu Feng froze for a moment. A moment later, a slightly anxious expression appeared on his face. Qingran, why do you want to leave? Seeing Lu Feng's anxious expression, Yu Qingran smiled with satisfaction. She playfully wrinkled her nose. Actually, I can't learn anything here. When I left, the Lu family's ancestor said that when I returned, he would personally guide me and help me enter the God Spirit realm as soon as possible. Hearing this, Lu Feng was silent for a moment. He knew Yu Qingran's choice was not wrong. With the Lu family's ancestors' personal guidance and the unlimited resources of the Lu family, Yu Qingran could indeed enter the God Spirit realm in the shortest time possible. However, Lu Feng was a bit reluctant. Yu Qingran naturally understood Lu Feng's thoughts. She thought of the Lu family's ancestors' words before she left. Although she was also reluctant, she still said it in the end. Lu Feng, there's still a long way to go. I also want to stay young forever. I want to be with you all the time. And if I want to do that, I must become a god. If it was here, it would take me a long, long time to do it. If that's the case, I might as well return to the Lu family and break through as soon as possible with the help of the ancestors. Only in this way can I break through as quickly as possible. It won't be a burden to you, and it won't affect me. Silence. Endless silence. Finally, Lu Feng nodded. Then, if you've really decided, so be it. I knew that this was the best choice. I respect your choice. With a light smile, Yu held Lu Feng's arm and pulled Lu Feng out. The three of them left the Federal University and found a hotel. They didn't choose the biggest or most luxurious one, but the closest one. Whether it was Yu Qingran, Lu Feng, or Li Tianlai, they didn't care where they ate. What they cared about was who they were with. The meal was quickly finished. Naturally, Lu Feng was the one who paid. This time, before leaving, Lu Feng carefully inquired about the specific functions of the payment card. It turned out that it was a VIP card jointly issued by the top banks of the Federation. There was no money in it because it meant that it could be used for unlimited payments. No matter how much money it was, as long as it was used, it could be used to pay. After paying, Li Tianlai wisely didn't stay with Lu Feng. Instead, he left. It was getting closer and closer to the start of the school term. As the principal, Li Tianlai naturally had to hurry back to the Cymbidium to preside over everything. Naturally, there was no one left to disturb Lu Feng and Yu Qingran. In the following 3 days, Lu Feng and Yu Qingran played all over the Paradise City. Of course, if they wanted to play all over the city, 3 days wouldn't be enough. Even if they spent 3 months, they would only be able to see it once. After all, the Paradise City was too big. However, in these 3 days, the two played to their heart's content. Because he knew that Yu Qingran was about to leave, Lu Feng also put down everything and wholeheartedly accompanied Yu Qingran to go crazy and play with her. Finally, 3 days passed quickly. In the center of the spaceship, Lu Feng watched Yu Qingran board the Lu family's top-grade spaceship and leave here. Originally, Lu Feng wanted to personally send Yu Qingran back to the Lu family. Unfortunately, Yu Qingran refused. Her reason was that Lu Feng couldn't delay the start of the school term. However, under Lu Feng's countless urging, Yu Qingran finally agreed to Lu Feng's request to take the Lu family's top-grade spaceship. Even so, Lu Feng still had a lot of worries. However, compared to letting Yu and Qingran take a spaceship alone, taking the Lu family's top-grade spaceship would make Lu Feng feel a little more at ease. After all, the Lu family's top-grade spaceship was very safe. After watching Yu and Qingran leave, Lu Feng let out a sigh of relief. Today was the start of the school term. Lu Feng still had to go back and prepare well. The school gave him a standalone luxurious dormitory. Of course, this was not specially prepared because of Lu Feng's identity. After all, Lu Feng had said before that he didn't need any special treatment. According to Director Zhang, this standalone luxurious dormitory was for all special admissions students. After knowing this, Lu Feng didn't say anything. The opening ceremony was in the afternoon. After sending Yu Qingran off in the morning, Lu Feng first went to the dormitory to familiarize himself with it. Then, he went to the city center again. This time, Lu Feng planned to buy a hover car. With Lu Feng's current strength, his speed was countless times faster than the best hover car. After all, he now had the strength of a god who could travel through space. However, Lu Feng couldn't travel through space all the time in the school. Moreover, it was not suitable for him to rely on his warrior physique to go in and out. In addition, Lu Feng didn't lack money now, so he planned to buy a hover car to satisfy his small wish. When Lu Fenglai arrived at the largest hover car market in Paradise City, it was only around 10 o'clock in the morning. There were still 4 hours before the opening ceremony started at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. 4 hours was enough for Lu Feng to choose a hover car he liked. Now that Lu Feng had enough money, he didn't want to choose some low-level hover cars. Because now Lu Feng didn't need to deliberately hide anything. He also didn't have any special hobby of pretending to be low-key. Therefore, Lu Feng directly went to the 9th floor of the hover car center, which was the top floor. "Hello, sir, would you like to see or buy a hover car?" On the top floor, there were some real aristocratic hover cars. The price of one here was no less than 10 million Federation coins. Most people who came here were mostly here to feast their eyes. And in this case, the hover car center didn't stop them. In fact, it was very welcoming. They would provide all kinds of snacks and drinks for every visitor. Of course, there were no waiters. After all, the number of people who came here to watch every day was very large. If there were waiters for every visitor, the hover car center wouldn't be too busy. But even so, their way of doing things was still very much appreciated by Lu Feng. He knew that the hover car center also treated those who came to watch with such good treatment. It wasn't because they were kind. Businessmen pursued profits. This was the nature of all businessmen. What they did was nothing more than a means of marketing and promotion. Although these people wouldn't buy it, it was hard to guarantee that the people around them wouldn't buy it. The people who left this place would definitely tell the people around them what they had seen. And those who heard it, if they were interested, more than 90% of their first choice would be this place. The value that a hover car could earn was definitely incomparably terrifying. And the snacks and drinks they provided were really nothing. So, as long as they could rely on these visitors to sell even one hover car, they would make a huge profit. Looking at the beautiful waitress in front of him, Lu Feng said, I plan to buy it directly. Can you introduce it to me? Hearing that Lu Feng didn't want to take a look and wanted to buy it directly, the waitress's eyes lit up slightly. If she could sell one, the commission she could get would be absolutely terrifying. This meant that even though she might not be able to sell a single hover car in a few months or even a year, this ninth-floor sales center was still the most desirable place for all customers. If she didn't have enough money, she probably wouldn't have such an opportunity. Looking at Lu Feng, the beautiful waitress's smile became even more eye-catching. She said to Lu Feng, "Yes, sir. Please follow me." Turning around, she directly led Lu Feng to the center. "Sir, what type of hover car do you want and what price? We have a complete range of hover cars here, and they're basically all in stock. There's no need to wait. And the prices range from 10 million to the top 1 billion Federation dollars." While speaking, the waitress had already led Lu Feng to a place where sports hover cars were concentrated. It had to be said that those who could become waitresses on the ninth floor were all extremely intelligent. When she saw that Lu Feng was a young man, she directly led him to the place where sports hover cars were concentrated. After all, most young people like sports hovers. Lu Feng looked at these hover cars and nodded lightly. "I need sports hovers. I wonder what the prices here are." Hearing Lu Feng's words, the beautiful waitress smiled slightly. "It's like this, sir. Our hover cars include almost all of the famous hover car series in the Federation. Although some of them aren't on display here, we basically have them in our warehouse." Speaking of this, the beautiful waitress's face was filled with pride. After all, there were only a few companies in the entire Federation that had this kind of ability. Lu Feng smiled lightly. He was somewhat impressed by the background of this hover car sales center. This kind of ability was definitely not something that an ordinary company could possess. "In that case, can you introduce me to a few models that are faster and more comfortable?" What Lu Feng needed was speed and comfort. As for safety, that wasn't within his scope of consideration at all. Right now, even if a planet were to collapse, as long as Lu Feng entered an extreme state, it wouldn't be able to kill him. Therefore, for Lu Feng, even if a huge car accident happened, he wouldn't be harmed in the slightest. Chapter 549. The beautiful attendant's eyes lit up slightly, and she nodded lightly. Lu Feng's request undoubtedly proved one point, that was, what Lu Feng wanted to buy this time must be the real Aristocrat series. After all, Lu Feng did not have any strange expression after hearing the price, and directly stated his request. Following behind the beautiful attendant, Lu Feng and the attendant quickly came to a separate exhibition hall. "Sir, all the sports suspension cars here are the top series. The only ones that can meet your requirements are these top-notch suspension cars." Lu Feng nodded lightly, did not care about the beautiful attendant beside him, and walked on his own. Logically speaking, an existence like Lu Feng should not care about the enjoyment of mortals like suspension cars, but he was different. The time it took for Lu Feng to go from an ordinary person to an almost invincible existence in the younger generation was just over a year. Such a time, such a speed, was undoubtedly frightening. Although he had wasted 10 years in the realm of time and the realm of time, he had spent those 10 years cultivating. He had spent those 10 years in Xin Yuan's Sea of Consciousness. Therefore, he did not have any life experience during this time. In other words, until now, Lu Feng had only experienced life for more than a year after entering the path of a warrior. His temperament was still the same as before, the ordinary Lu Feng temperament. Moreover, since young, Lu Feng had been unusually fond of suspension cars and other mechanical existences. Otherwise, he would not have chosen to be a mechanical psychic. Therefore, now that he had the conditions, Lu Feng did not mind buying the most luxurious suspension car to satisfy himself. Looking at the 30 silent suspension cars in the separate exhibition hall, Lu Feng's eyes revealed a strange emotion. Finally, when Lu Feng walked to the side of a suspension car, he stopped completely. After looking at so many suspension cars, Lu Feng was not very satisfied, but only this one caught Lu Feng's eye at a glance. Because from this two-suspension car, Lu Feng seemed to see a similar temperament to himself. This was a kind of king of cars, a kind of supreme feeling in cars. Without any hesitation, Lu Feng directly said to the beautiful attendant, "This is the one." The beautiful attendant was slightly stunned. She had never seen a buyer like Lu Feng, who did not even ask about the price and performance, and directly bought it. If it were not for Lu Feng's strange temperament, the beautiful attendant would have suspected that Lu Feng was here to amuse her. After a moment, she had completely recovered. With an expression of unconcealable excitement hanging at the corner of her mouth, the beautiful attendant still followed the rules and introduced to Lu Feng. "Sir, this is the top suspension car series created by the Federal Luxury Goods Company Long Yasi Group, a sports suspension car in the Royal Family series. The name of this two-suspension car is Emperor, which matches its name. It is the top existence of the Royal series. In the entire Federation, the number of emperors is definitely not more than 100. And it is also the only one in our Paradise City sales center." Lu Feng nodded his head gently. Looking at this suspension car, Lu Feng liked it more and more. This liking was not only because of its temperament but also because of its temperament. That was its name, Emperor. Lu Feng was the Emperor, the Supreme Lord of all existence. And this Emperor was the top existence of the Royal Series, and also the top existence of the sports suspension cars of the Federation. It could be said that only this kind of suspension car was worthy of Lu Feng's status. Looking at Lu Feng's undisguised expression, the beautiful waitress's expression became even more excited. She could see that Lu Feng liked this suspension car from the bottom of his heart. And if she could sell this suspension car, just the commission alone would be enough to cover her salary for more than 10 years. But in the end, the attendant took a deep breath, a trace of worry flashing across her eyes. Because she had not said the price yet. She was really afraid that Lu Feng would give up in the end after hearing the price. In that case, her commission would fly away. "Sir, although this Emperor is the top of the sports suspension car category, its price is also not cheap. Because of various restrictions, the sales price is different from place to place. And in our heavenly city, this is the only Emperor's car. Its price may be slightly higher than the price listed on the Sky Network." Speaking up to this point, the beautiful waitress even stretched out 2 of her fingers and lightly pinched them, indicating how little this little bit was. Seeing her slightly playful expression, Lu Feng smiled. Lu Feng had been reluctant to part with Yu, but now that the Emperor had appeared, and because of the beautiful waitress's witty appearance, Lu Feng let go. "Okay. Just tell me the price. I don't care how much it is, I want it." Lu Feng's words were considered to have given her reassurance. At this moment, the attendant finally relaxed and stuck out her tongue, looking incomparably cute. Seeing this, Lu Feng just smiled and shook his head. He really did not know how a girl like this could become a salesperson. "Sir, the Emperor's price is 1.21 billion Federation dollars. Of course, according to the authority given to me by the company, if you want it now and pay directly, then the price can be lowered to 1.2 billion. This is already my greatest authority." After saying this, the beautiful waitress looked at Lu Feng with watery eyes. Her heartbeat was about to jump to her throat. Although Lu Feng said that he would buy it no matter what, the price was too scary. However, after she said the price and looked at Lu Feng's expression for a few seconds, she finally sighed deeply. She realized that after she told Lu Feng the price, Lu Feng's expression did not change at all, not even the slightest bit of trembling. This was an extremely calm color. It was as if there was no difference between the price of 1.2 billion and 12 yuan. "Okay, just pay the bill. Help me put it downstairs, I'll just drive it away." This time, the beautiful waitress was sure of it. She knew that Lu Feng would definitely buy it. "Okay, sir, please wait a moment." As she spoke, the attendant had already opened her own Sky Network account. In this society, it was very difficult to impersonate a company's account. At the very least, only the top people on the Sky Network could do this. Such people would not bother to do such a thing. Therefore, when he saw the beautiful waitress pull up Tian Luo's company account, Lu Feng did not have any doubts. He directly connected his payment card to it and instantly transferred 2 billion yuan. 2 billion. For an ordinary person, they would not be able to earn this much even if they did not eat or drink for 10,000 years. However, Lu Feng had casually used it in an instant. Of course, this was nothing to Lu Fenglai. With his current existence, not to mention 2 billion, even 12 trillion was just a casual number. He really did not care about this. Back in the foreign battlefields, the price of those divine items had easily been in the hundreds of trillions. The exchange rate between divine item points and Federation dollars was 1 to 10,000. In fact, this exchange rate was even higher. Basically, 30,000 to 40,000 Federation dollars might not even be enough to exchange for one divine item point. 2 billion was only equivalent to 120,000 divine item points. This 120,000 was really not even considered a drizzle to Lu Feng. After completing the payment, the beautiful waitress let out a deep breath. Her appearance made Lu Feng feel even more amused. Of course, that was all. Lu Feng would not fall in love with just anyone. The beautiful waitress contacted the Heavenly Network. A few seconds later, the few of them walked out and headed towards the Emperor's car. Lu Feng knew that these people were probably the delivery crew. Lu Feng turned around and was about to leave. However, as he took a step forward, he suddenly thought of something. He turned around and looked at the beautiful waitress again. Lu Feng smiled gently and said, "Do you want to earn money again?" Hearing this, the attendant did not look as excited as Lu Feng had imagined. At that moment, her gaze suddenly became a little strange. Lu Feng even saw a trace of disgust in it. In the blink of an eye, her fiery mood had completely changed and turned into an extremely cold expression. She looked at Lu Feng and said coldly, "I'm sorry, sir. This money is enough. I don't want to do anything else. Also, although I'm just a sales attendant, I have my own dignity. No matter how much money I have, I won't sell myself." She said this resolutely, and Lu Feng could see her determination. However, Lu Feng was confused by her words. However, after a short while, Lu Feng completely understood. Suddenly, his face was filled with a strange expression. Looking up and down at the beautiful attendant, Lu Feng's expression became more and more strange. Although this beautiful waitress was indeed very beautiful, the degree of her beauty was not extreme enough to make Lu Feng lose his composure. Compared to Lu Feng's two confidants, Yu Qingran and Mu Shuyan, she was definitely inferior. With the two of them, Lu Feng did not have any other thoughts about other people. Seeing Lu Feng's expression, the attendant's expression became even more disgusted. She quietly clenched her fist, but after a while, she finally relaxed. She looked at Lu Feng with an even deeper disgust. Finally, she stopped looking and turned to leave. Although he did not care about the opinions of ordinary people, Lu Feng was definitely not strange enough to accept other people's misunderstandings. The next moment, he opened his mouth and called out to the attendant, "I think you misunderstood. Although you are very beautiful, you are not enough to make me lose my composure to the point of being shameless." Hearing Lu Feng's words, the attendant's fists clenched tightly again. She did not look back. Lu Feng smiled faintly and said indifferently, "I just want to buy a suspension car for my sister and let you continue to be my attendant. As for other thoughts, I really have no interest in them." The attendant turned around and frowned slightly. She quietly looked into Lu Feng's eyes until Lu Feng burst out laughing. Finally, she blushed and lowered her head in embarrassment. "Sorry, sir, I am really sorry. I misunderstood, I am really sorry." She hurriedly apologized a few times, and even her face was thoroughly red. Seeing the attendant's appearance, Lu Feng did not blame her at all. Lu Feng did not care much about these people. Lu Feng also admired the attendant's character. Society was full of materialistic desires. For some material enjoyment they could sell their souls and races, let alone their bodies. In comparison, although this beautiful waitress was very rude, Lu Feng still appreciated her appearance. Forget it, but do you still want to earn this money? Chapter 550. Lu Feng tilted his head slightly and looked at the beautiful waitress with a joking tone. Upon hearing Lu Feng's words, the beautiful waitress lifted her head abruptly and looked at Lu Feng with hopeful eyes. Yes, of course I do. I'm sorry, it was a misunderstanding. Please forgive me. Looking at the beautiful waitress's pitiful appearance, Lu Feng smiled and gently shook his head. Okay, I forgive you. Now take me to have a look. I don't have much time left. The beautiful waitress nodded her head firmly. Then, he came to Lu Feng's side again. In that case, sir, what type of suspension car does your sister want? Lu Feng was silent for a moment. This car was bought by him for Lulu. Lu Feng knew that Lulu would be very dissatisfied with him if he left her alone in the Federation. This time, if he bought a car and didn't buy one for her, he was afraid that she would be a little angry. However, Lu Feng really didn't know what type of man Lulu liked. After pondering for a moment, he slowly opened his mouth and said, I'm not sure either. However, my younger sister is more gentle and quiet, and occasionally a little weird. Her heart is very kind, but she also feels a bit like Sangsang. Because she has experienced too many things, she has suffered too much pain. Speaking of Lulu, Lulu's image constantly appeared in Lu Feng's mind. At this moment, Lu Feng also began to talk about her. No matter what difficulties she faced them bravely. Nothing could erase the kindness in her heart. Just like that, Lu Feng just wanted to casually describe Lulu's character, but by the time he finished, a full 10 minutes had passed. Looking at the slightly strange expression of the beautiful waitress beside him, Lu Feng smiled awkwardly. Sorry, I made a fool of myself. This time, the beautiful waitress didn't smile at all. She just shook her head gently. Sir, I really envy your sister. She has a brother who loves her so much. For you to be able to describe everything about her in such a complete manner, there is no doubt that you really love your sister very much. She is truly blessed. Lu Feng's awkward smile finally stopped. This time, he let out a deep sigh. Actually, I don't love her. Because of us, she suffered too much. I just want to make it up to her. The atmosphere was heavy. Finally, after a few seconds, the beautiful waitress broke the silence and awkwardness. Sir, based on your description, I suggest you buy a crystal car for her. This type of hover car is specially developed for girls. It's hard on the outside and can't be destroyed. After experiencing all the precipitation and friction, after experiencing countless tribulations and baptisms, in his heart, he had always maintained that kind of clear and pure white. This series of events seems to have been prepared for your sister. When she said the word crystal, Lu Feng had already made his decision. Just as the beautiful waitress said, Lulu was really a crystal-like girl. Since that's the case, why don't you bring me to take a look at the crystal suspension car? I think this car is really suitable for her. Looking at the beautiful attendant beside him, Lu Feng chuckled and said, Previously, I thought that you weren't a professional suspension car sales attendant, but after hearing what you said just now, I feel that I was wrong. Many of the actions the waitress did were things that professional car salespeople wouldn't do. However, after hearing about Lulu's character, her analysis of her words showed her professional level, which made Lu Feng feel that he had made a mistake. However, upon hearing this, the beautiful waitress blushed slightly. Sir, you're right. I'm not a professional car salesperson. I'm only working part-time here. Lu Feng was slightly taken aback. After a moment, he smiled and said nothing. They've arrived at the Crystal Car Sales Center. Lu Feng nodded lightly as he looked at the hovering cars in front of him. The Crystal series, just as the beautiful waitress said, was really designed for Lulu. The temperament of the cars was very similar to Lulu's personality. It was the same feeling he had when he first saw the Emperor. Lu Feng glanced around and finally found a suspension car that he was satisfied with. After a few steps, Lu Feng had already reached the side of the hover car. This is it, this time, he didn't ask for the price. But the waitress didn't care. She could see that Lu Feng didn't care about money at all. Nodding with a smile, the beautiful waitress said, "Sir, I'm not trying to flatter you, but your eyesight is really too good. It was the same for the previous royal family series, and it's the same now. You can always identify the most noble and valuable existences at a glance." Previously, in the Royal Family Sales Exhibition Hall, all the Royal Family series were placed separately. It really looked like there was no order or obvious prominent position. But Lu Feng chose the Emperor at first glance. If the first time was an accident, then this time it was Lu Feng's strength that caused it. Because Lu Feng had once again chosen the best suspension car in the Crystal series. This Crystal Heart is the essence of the Crystal series. Can be said to be the best suspension car in the world. Whether it's safety, comfort, or speed, it's one of the best in the Federation. Of course, its price is in line with its status. But I think that with your wealth, you wouldn't care about these things, right? After saying this, the beautiful waitress playfully stuck out her tongue again. Lu Feng could see that she wasn't that professional. There was no need for her to pretend. Plus, after the misunderstanding and Lu Feng's description of his sister, she had a good impression of Lu Feng. So she didn't pretend in front of Lu Feng. The price of this car isn't as high as the royal family car you just bought, but it's one of the best. It costs 530 million Federation dollars. I can save you 10 million. Plus, you bought the royal family car before, so you can save some money. In that case, 510 million should be enough. Lu Feng nodded and took out his payment card. He had already completed a transaction before. This time it was a walk in the park for him. Therefore, the beautiful waitress quickly completed the transaction. So, sir, what do you plan to do with this car? Lu Feng thought for a bit. He was in a bit of a dilemma. Because he didn't know where to send it. After all, Lu Feng didn't know which class Lulu was in. After hesitating for a bit, Lu Feng told the waitress the address of his villa at the Federal University. After hearing Lu Feng's address, the beautiful waitress's eyes slightly froze, a strange look appeared on her face. But this look disappeared in a flash. Lu Feng was thinking about Lulu's position at the moment, so he didn't see the strange look in the waitress's eyes. When he looked up, the waitress had completely returned to normal. Okay, that's fine. You can just send it over. I have something to do in the afternoon, so I'll leave first. Let's meet again in the future. While speaking, Lu Feng gently waved his arm at the beautiful waitress, turned around and left. Looking at Lu Feng's departing figure, a strange look flashed across the eyes of the beautiful waitress. But soon, she thought of something and suddenly let out a slightly excited voice. Damn, I was so focused on making money that I forgot about the opening ceremony. Unlucky, unlucky, really unlucky. But, who is this handsome guy? There aren't many people in the university who are as generous, as handsome, and as elegant as him. Those famous people seem to be different from him. Who is he? While thinking, the waitress has already started running downstairs. The commission from these 2 hover cars was enough for her to become a rich woman. Hence, she gave up on this part-time job. Forget it. Anyway, as long as he's a student of the university, I'll definitely meet him in the future. It takes about an hour to get from the car sales center to the Federal University's main campus, but by the time Lu Feng left the sales center, it was already past 1 o'clock in the afternoon. Fortunately, the Emperor hover car he bought was powerful enough to allow him to travel a distance that would normally take an hour and a half for a normal hover car to travel in less than 30 minutes. On this road, it was not completely unimpeded. During this period, there were many sections where the speed limit was. Therefore, it was a miracle to be able to complete the entire journey in just half an hour. By the time Lu Feng entered the Federal University's main campus, it was already 1:50. With Lu Feng's driving skills, 10 minutes was enough for him to reach the main campus building. After quickly parking the car, Lu Feng directly entered the main campus building. There were less than 3 minutes left before the start of the opening ceremony. At this time, Lu Feng didn't care about continuing to hide anything. At this moment, he fully utilized his cultivation base. He didn't even use the staircase, directly going up the stairs to the 99th floor. When Lu Feng pushed open the door, many eyes focused on him. This was the opening ceremony of the main campus. Usually, those who wanted to participate would arrive early. There was almost no one who arrived at the last minute like Lu Feng. Therefore, Lu Feng's appearance attracted almost everyone's attention. Of course, if it were anyone else, it would be very difficult for them to accept the attention of millions of people. However, in this situation, Lu Feng didn't have much of a reaction. This was because he had faced the attention of billions of people before, and those people were at least warriors. Let alone millions of ordinary people, even millions of gods wouldn't make him the slightest bit concerned. There was no excessive clamor. Lu Feng simply found a seat nearby and sat down. At this moment, he finally began to size up the teachers on the podium. Among them, the deans of the 4 grades, the dean of the Academic Affairs Office, and various special teachers all appeared. However, among them, only Dao Songtian was missing. In fact, Lu Feng could have guessed this situation. What kind of existence was Dao Songtian? He was already a terrifying powerhouse who belonged to the Almighty King realm. Now that he had stepped into the Void Emperor realm, he could be called a peerless Almighty. Although such an existence was the principle of the Federal University, he wouldn't appear in such an occasion. If one wanted to see Dao Songtian appear, it would be under some special circumstances, or directly through the video information on the Federal University's homepage on the Sky Network. Chapter 551. On the rostrum, several teachers who didn't know Lu Feng's identity frowned slightly. They really didn't like students like Lu Feng. Although the rules said that the ceremony would start at 2:00, all the students arrived at around 1:30. Only Lu Feng appeared in the last few minutes. This undoubtedly showed that Lu Feng didn't take the ceremony seriously at all. He didn't take the teachers and directors seriously at all. If it weren't for the fact that the ceremony was about to start, several teachers would have come over to reprimand Lu Feng. Of course, Director Zhang of the Department of Political Education didn't have such thoughts. He just looked at the school leaders around him with a strange expression. Director Zhang understood that even if he appeared in the middle of the meeting, or even directly messed up the ceremony, no one would dare to say anything, let alone arrive at the last minute. After all, the significance of Lu Feng was too terrifying. It could be said that Lu Feng's appearance was already a great blessing. Moreover, these school leaders who were dissatisfied with Lu Feng were all terrifying demigods. Perhaps their strength was enough to shake the world, but compared to Lu Fenglai, compared to the 18-year-old boy in front of them, they were still far behind. The gap was too big. Director Zhang believed that if there was a real confrontation, Lu Feng would only need one move to completely annihilate everyone on the rostrum at this moment, except for the vice principal. Finally, as 2:00 came, the ceremony started smoothly. Although Lu Feng's appearance was a small flaw, no one cared about it. Because the start-of-term ceremony was very important. For 2 whole hours, the teachers, directors, vice principals, and so on took turns to speak. Although they didn't say much, there were too many people, so by the time they finished speaking, 2 whole hours had passed. The rest of the time was mainly for some directors to introduce the school's purpose and constitution. After everything was said, 3 whole hours had passed. Finally, everything was done, and the ceremony was completely over. At this time, it was already 5 o'clock in the afternoon. Lu Feng was the person closest to the main entrance. When it was over, Lu Feng was naturally the first to leave. On the rostrum, looking at Lu Feng's back as he left first, a director finally frowned slightly. Although his voice wasn't loud, the surrounding directors could clearly hear him. This student is a bit too much. This kind of behavior is simply disrespectful to the elders. Hearing this, the few department heads nodded slightly. They were all directors of the Federal University. In the entire Human Federation, they were all extremely respected. Although they weren't very strong, they couldn't go against the terrifying reputation of the Federal University. No matter where they went, even if it was a divine spirit expert, they wouldn't be too arrogant when they saw them. But now Lu Feng didn't give them any face at all, which made them feel very dissatisfied. Unfortunately, when Director Zhang heard these people's voices of agreement, he only laughed. At this moment, everyone's eyes focused on him. Director Zhang, do you have any objections? Director Zhang was the director of the Department of Political Education. Among the directors, he had the most power. Although these people were very dissatisfied with Director Zhang's sudden smile, they couldn't say anything. After all, Director Zhang's power was greater than theirs. Director Zhang looked at these people and shook his head slightly. He really wanted to see these people who didn't know the immensity of heaven and earth clash with Lu Feng and be ruthlessly slapped in the face by Lu Feng. However, he also understood that this would be very bad for him. Therefore, he could only remind them now. I don't have any objections. Anyway, this student isn't late. After all, we set the time to start at 2 o'clock. He's not late. That's enough. Hearing this, the few directors frowned slightly. They looked at each other and saw the slightly strange look in each other's eyes. Director Zhang was the director of the Department of Political Education. His personality had always been unusually strict. He usually hated this kind of student the most. But now, he took the initiative to say such word. There had to be something strange going on. Director Zhang looked at these people's expressions and shook his head with a smile. He continued, "Besides, I'm not sure if you'll be able to do anything. Moreover, you probably don't know his identity. If you knew, I'm afraid you wouldn't say such words." Identity. They looked at each other and vaguely seemed to understand something. To be able to make this Director Zhang say such words, then it proved that the identity of the student just now was probably abnormally honorable. Otherwise, this director, who was usually incomparably strict, wouldn't say such words. However, although there were more than 1,000,000 students who had an unusually noble identity, there were very few who could make Director Zhang say such words. As for those few students, they all knew about them. Obviously, they were very unfamiliar with Lu Feng and the others. Director Zhang didn't hide anything. He said directly, "That student just now is the principal's youngest disciple. He's a descendant of the Lu family. His name is Lu Feng." At this moment, everyone's expression was filled with shock. They looked at each other and finally took a deep breath. Emperor Lu Feng. As directors of the Federal University, they naturally vaguely knew about Lu Feng's situation. The identity of Dao Songtian's youngest disciple was already very noble. But just this alone made them afraid at most. However, the name of Emperor Lu Feng didn't make them afraid. It made them feel terrified. After all, the name of the emperor represented not only supreme status but also terrifying power. It was a power that could easily destroy them. Lu Feng's existence was simply too frightening. It was simply too frightening. They knew that even if they were the principal, they still wouldn't be able to compare with that young man in terms of status, let alone just a few directors. Because he was too noble. He actually came to our school. After leaving the main teaching building, Lu Feng went directly to the side of his hover car. Just like that, Lu Feng drove his hover car away under everyone's watchful eyes and ran towards his dormitory. Many people who saw Lu Feng leave took a deep breath. Most of these people were rich people. They naturally recognized Lu Feng's car. It's actually an emperor. That student just now is from some big tycoon or some aristocratic family. I didn't expect that such a person was hidden in our school. This is really inconceivable. Looks like there will be a lot to see in the future. If this student is really just rich but not powerful, then it won't be long before he's unlucky. I remember that the little tyrant in his 3rd year used an emperor. Given his personality, how could he allow others to drive the same hover car as him? Lu Feng couldn't hear these people's discussions. He had already driven a long distance away. If Lu Feng didn't deliberately listen, these voices wouldn't reach his ears. Besides, even if Lu Feng knew, what could he do? Lu Feng didn't care about this at all. After all, there was basically no one in the younger generation that he cared about. In just 3 minutes, Lu Feng had returned to his dormitory. Besides the Emperor's speed, he was able to travel so fast because the road was unobstructed. All the students had entered the auditorium to attend the opening ceremony. Lu Feng was the first to leave, so he was the only one driving on campus at the moment. As a result, Lu Feng was completely unobstructed. When Lu Fenglai arrived at his villa, a hover car was parked quietly in front of his door. It was the Crystal Heart, the hover car Lu Feng had ordered previously. When he had attended the opening ceremony, the hover car had already been delivered. When he saw the hover car, Lu Feng thought of Lulu. After thinking for a bit, Lu Feng decided to check on Lulu's whereabouts first. The opening ceremony would be held in the afternoon, and the opening dinner would be held in the evening. The location of the dinner would be in the plaza. There was no doubt that this was a gathering of millions of people. Not to mention what they were eating, just this lively scene was enough to make anyone feel relaxed and happy. Lu Feng wanted to find Lulu at night. Otherwise, she would definitely throw a tantrum if she found out that he hadn't visited her in 3 days. As he thought about Lulu, Lu Feng's lips curled into a warm smile. After opening the Sky Network, Lu Feng immediately found Director Zhang's contact information. Director Zhang had insisted on giving it to him when he had left the Department of Political Education. Previously, Lu Feng had thought that he wouldn't be able to use it. He hadn't expected that he would actually need it in just a few days. After a few rings, the call was picked up. Director Zhang's voice came from the other end. "Student Lu Feng, is there anything you need from me?" If it had been anyone else, the initiator would definitely have spoken first. However, when it came to Lu Feng, Director Zhang beat him to it. This was because he knew the gap between him and Lu Feng. Lu Feng smiled gently. He looked at Director Zhang's image on the Sky Network and said directly, "Director Zhang, there is indeed something I need to trouble you with this time." Director Zhang was still smiling. He nodded gently and said directly, "What is it? As long as it's something I can do, it definitely won't be a problem." Without any hesitation, Lu Feng said, "It's like this, Director. I have a cousin who is also studying in the General Hospital. Her name is Lulu. I wonder if you can help me look into it?" Lulu's real name was Lulu. Her previous surname had been abandoned when her mother passed away. Now she was a member of the Lu family. Director Zhang nodded his head gently. As he spoke, he had already opened the freshman's database. Soon, he pulled out 3 files related to Lulu. He sent all 3 files to Lu Feng. "Student Lu Feng, these 3 people are all called Lulu. Take a look and see which one is the one you are looking for." Lu Feng nodded gently and focused on looking at the photos. With just a glance, Lu Feng saw Lulu's existence. With a smile, he began to look through Lulu's file. Of course, these files were fake. What Lu Feng really wanted to see was Lulu's class, the specially recruited class of the first-year psyche faculty. Chapter 552. Lu Feng nodded his head gently. Given Lulu's aptitude, it wouldn't be a problem for her to enter the Federal University's General Hospital. However, it would be difficult for her to become a specially enrolled student. However, considering that she had been arranged by the Lu family, being a specially enrolled student wasn't a big deal. I've already found her. Thank you, Director Zhang. Director Zhang was undoubtedly very happy to be able to establish a good relationship with Lu Feng. Plus, Lu Feng had asked for his help with such a trivial matter. It's nothing, Student Lu Feng. If you need anything in the future, just contact me directly. Lu Feng smiled and nodded his head. After exchanging a few pleasantries with Director Zhang, he turned off the Sky Network. As he stood in front of the door, Lu Feng once again sank into deep thought. In the end, Lu Feng still walked into the villa. He had thought about it before. If he went to look for Lulu now, he might not be able to find her. If it was night time, perhaps he could give her a surprise. As he thought about this, Lu Feng smiled faintly. When he returned to the dormitory, Lu Feng tidied up his clothes a little. At his current level, he shouldn't care too much about his appearance. However, Lu Feng was still an 18-year-old young man. Sometimes, he still wished that he could be a little more tidy. As he looked at himself in the mirror, Lu Feng smiled in satisfaction. Lu Tao and Yen Shenwei's genes were already good enough. Therefore, although Lu Feng's looks weren't the best in the Federation, he was still considered very outstanding. Plus, because of his cultivation, Lu Feng had the elegance of a telekinesis master and the dominance of a martialist. The combination of these two qualities gave him a unique temperament. It's a pity that I've already jumped off the path. Otherwise, if the aura of a Tao-accessing entity still existed, I would really be able to charm a lot of people. Lu Feng shook his head gently. He was just joking with himself. It had been 2 months since Lu Feng returned to the human race. During the time he spent with Yu Yu and Qing Ran, Lu Feng gradually regained his natural instincts. Lu Feng had gradually concealed the terrifying killing intent that belonged to the foreign battlefield. The consequence of this was that Lu Feng was becoming more and more like an ordinary young man. Looking at the time on the Sky Network, it was already 6:30 p.m. The banquet would start at 7 o'clock. It would take 20 minutes to get to the square from here if one were to take the hover bus. Of course, with the Emperor by his side, 5 minutes would be enough. It was just that Lu Feng didn't want to be too ostentatious in front of everyone, so he ultimately chose to take the interschool bus. After leaving the villa, it took them 3 minutes to arrive at the location where the hover car would pass by. 5 minutes later, a hover car finally stopped beside Lu Feng. Lu Feng didn't hesitate. He got on the car and headed to the campus square. The campus square was a campus square built by the Federal University General Hospital. It was considered one of the more famous squares in the Human Federation. The scale of the square was extremely terrifying. It was almost half the size of a third-grade city. Therefore, it wasn't a big deal for millions or even tens of millions of people to eat together, let alone millions of people. By the time Lu Fenglai arrived, the square was already packed with people. This time, there was no such thing as being late. After all, this banquet wasn't compulsory. The banquet was divided into classes. Lu Feng's class was a second-year Psyche faculty special recruit class. Unfortunately, Lu Feng didn't recognize anyone in the class. Su Wenchao and Mu Shiyan both went to the outland battlefield to find him. Therefore, Lu Feng didn't have much interest in his class. To be honest, he was somewhat interested in Lulu's class. Moreover, Lu Feng's main purpose of attending the banquet today was Lulu. In the next moment, Lu Feng had already walked into the square. Looking at the vast crowd, Lu Feng was somewhat speechless. He knew Lulu's class, but he couldn't find where it was. After hesitating for a moment, Lu Feng decided to ask someone first. The people here were basically all students. Although this banquet was for teachers and students, there were very few teachers who actually came here. Basically, except for those who had just graduated and became teachers, the others didn't come. Of course, those few directors would also appear. This represented the school's attitude. As he walked quietly in the crowd and looked at the happy expressions on their faces, Lu Feng's heart felt slightly strange. Although many of the people here were much older than him, Lu Feng still felt that he was looking down on them with the attitude of an elder. Lu Feng smiled bitterly. He knew that in just a few days, his attitude wouldn't change completely. Although he had only been away from the ordinary circle for a year, he had experienced too much during this time. Even if there were many virtual king existences, who had lived together for thousands of years, they still couldn't compare to Lu Feng. Therefore, after more than a year of tempering, Lu Feng's heart had become incomparably weathered. Sigh, I really don't look like a teenager. Perhaps many people envied Lu Feng's current strength, but Lu Feng really didn't want all this. If he could, he would rather be an ordinary teenager and live an ordinary life with his family every day. No matter what, I have already jumped out of the shackles of fate. No one can control my future. Since I have already embarked on this path, I can't give up. Because I am the Emperor Lu Feng. At this moment, a dazzling light appeared in Lu Feng's eyes. In his heart, his willpower was still incomparably firm. Looking at the passing crowd, Lu Feng finally stopped someone who was about the same age as him. This student, I have some questions to ask. When he heard that Lu Feng had something to ask, the student stopped decisively. The Federal University had a special characteristic, which was unity, incomparable unity. Of course, there might be a lot of people in this circle who didn't fit in, but overall, the Federal University was widely recognized as the most united university. Regardless of whether they were in school or out of school, as long as a student needed help, they would do their best to help. This was the Federal University's mission and tradition. This time, there was a student in the school who needed help, so the student naturally stopped. "What's the matter? Ask away." When he heard this, Lu Feng smiled gently. He was incomparably amiable. "It's like this. I want to ask where the specially recruited class for first-year psyche faculty is located." When he heard this, the student smiled gently. He didn't tell Lu Feng directly. Instead, he opened the Sky Network. The location of the gathering this time is all on the Sky Network. You didn't pay attention to the school's Sky Network homepage before, right? Lu Feng was slightly taken aback when he heard this, but he still nodded his head. The Sky Network was currently just a communication tool for Lu Feng. He really hadn't used it in other aspects. Now that he heard this classmate mention it, Lu Feng realized something. "Indeed, I'm sorry. I'll download it immediately." The student shook his head gently. "I'm afraid there isn't any now. How about this? Open the Sky Network and I'll send you a map." Lu Feng nodded his head gently and opened his own Sky Network. In an instant, the two of them were connected. The next moment, Lu Feng received an invitation. It was an invitation to the Heavenly Network. Without hesitation, he accepted it. In less than a second, the transmission of the message was completed. Lu Feng didn't look at it immediately. Instead, he thanked the student. After that person left, Lu Feng opened his own Sky Network and started looking for the location of the first-year Psyche faculty. Even though Lu Feng had the cultivation of a Psyche master, he was slightly speechless when he saw the instructions on the map. Apart from the specially recruited class for a warrior and a Psyche master, the number of other classes in a grade department was also very frightening. Basically, regardless of whether it was the first-year or second-year classes, there were a shocking number of classes. If it weren't for the existence of this map, Lu Feng would have to spend a lot of time looking for it himself. Following the guidance of the map on the Sky Network, Lu Feng finally arrived at the indicated location after searching for a long time. Looking at the 500 people in front of him, Lu Feng had a slightly strange expression in his heart. Of course, it wasn't because of the large number of people there. After all, the specially recruited class for first-year Psyche Masters represented the best of all the Psyche Masters in the Year 1 Psyche faculty. There were probably only 100 or so people who were still in the same place. The rest of the people were probably there to make connections. What really made Lu Feng's expression strange was an outstanding figure among the 500 people. She stood there quietly without saying a word. However, her every move seemed to be the center of attention. Just a casual walk would attract countless gazes. It could be said that among the 500 pairs of eyes, at least 400 pairs were focused on her. This was a kind of charm. It was a charm that no one could ignore or describe. She was none other than Lulu. Lu Feng smiled. This smile came from the bottom of his heart and was filled with a kind of familial warmth. At the moment, Lu Feng's domineering and sharp aura had faded away. He had become more amiable. A few girls who passed by Lu Feng couldn't help but take a few glances at Lu Feng. After all, whether it was in terms of appearance or temperament, Lu Feng belonged to the peak of the younger generation. It was natural for him to be able to attract the attention of girls. Back when he was not a monster and was just an ordinary person, Lu Feng was already an influential figure in the school. Now that he had completely transformed, no matter where he went, he was undoubtedly the center of attention. Without hesitation, Lu Feng walked slowly towards that figure. Lulu was smiling faintly. In front of her, the boys were trying their best to show off their humorous demeanor by constantly talking to Lulu. When they saw Lulu's smile, they couldn't help but become excited and work harder. Unfortunately, these people didn't understand how helpless Lulu was at the moment. She hadn't been very willing to come here in the first place. If it hadn't been for the invitation of her roommates, Lulu wouldn't have joined this troublesome dinner party. Initially, she planned to quietly muddle through the crowd, but who would have thought that no matter where she went, there would never be less people around her. Even when she returned to her class, there were still hundreds of people coming over with various reasons and excuses. Lulu, it seems that you have to go out more in the future. This way, I can benefit a lot. Chapter 553. An unusually sweet-looking girl was holding something in her hand, looking at Lulu happily as she spoke somewhat wittily. The things in her hands were all gifts from other people to Lulu, or to her directly, hoping to strike up a conversation with Lulu. Of course, the girl who spoke was from the same dorm as Lulu. Otherwise, she wouldn't have spoken so casually. Lulu could easily tell that she was joking. She looked helplessly at the excited boy who just left and said speechlessly, "Xiaofei, can't you stop making fun of me? Can't you see that I'm so annoyed right now?" Her face was full of annoyance. The girl called Xiaofei smiled slyly. "Lulu, you're treated like a dream of any girl. You know, ever since you came to school, the so-called 10 goddesses of the school have been overshadowed." Hearing this, Lulu rolled her eyes slightly. "Don't talk about me. What 10 goddesses of the school? The real geniuses didn't study in the school. Although they are in the school, they keep a low profile. The so-called top 10 goddesses are just girls who like to show off everywhere. Let's not talk about the distant ones. Even shouting is much prettier than them." Hearing this, Xiaofei did not refute. She gently nodded her head. "That's true. But the 10 of them do look pretty good. Unfortunately, compared to you, the gap is not small. But to be honest, Xiao Ting liked to be independent too much. With her appearance, she could just casually wave her hand and countless boys would flock to her. Does she have to work so hard?" Although there was a slight complaint in her tone, Xiaofei's eyes were also filled with a faint admiration. In this materialistic society, there were very few girls like Xiao Ting who could not be immersed in worldly affairs. "Alright, Lulu, what kind of boy are you looking for? From the looks of it, you don't seem to be very interested in these boys." You know, our federal university has gathered the most outstanding young people in the Federation. Of course, the top ones are all hidden by the big families. Don't even think about it. There are very few of them. I'm afraid there are only a few dozen suitable for you. Why don't you consider the boys here? After all, they're already at the peak. They're not bad at all. Lulu shook her head helplessly. Xiao Fei, if you're used to seeing amazing divine objects, would you be interested in seeing ordinary divine objects of the first or second rank? Xiao Fei shook her head. That's true. But these boys don't seem to be first or second grade divine items. Although the geniuses hidden by the big families are not bad, compared to them, the gap isn't that huge. Lulu's expression became serious this time. No, the gap is really big. The excellence of those people is far from what these people can compare with. These people don't even have the qualifications to look up. At this moment, Lulu thought of Jia Huawei. She thought of her cousin from the same family, Crown Prince Wang Qingyun. She also thought of her brother, Lu Feng. Unfortunately, Xiao Fei smiled helplessly when she heard this. Lulu, you're not going to talk about your cousin again, are you? I really don't know what's so good about your cousin. You're exaggerating. He's the #1 person in the world. I don't believe there's such a person in this world. The cousin you're talking about probably only exists in myths and legends. In the half-year since they'd arrived at the headquarters, they'd interacted with each other day and night. Their relationship was comparable to that of real sisters. Therefore, there were some things that they didn't hide from each other. As for Lulu's so-called cousin, they'd heard about it countless times. Unfortunately, no matter how much they asked, Lulu refused to tell them her cousin's identity. Sometimes, they even suspected that this cousin was just an excuse for Lulu, a fictional character she made up to shut these people's mouth. After all, Lulu's cousin was so outstanding that he shouldn't exist in the human world. Lulu pursed her lips. My cousin is 1,000,000 times more outstanding than I said. If you've seen him, you'll definitely think so too. Speaking of him, I really don't know when I'll be able to see him again. Even the old man said it out loud, but at this moment, Lulu's eyes flashed with a look of hatred. My cousin said he'd come back to see me as soon as possible, but it's been half a year. There's not even a trace of him. I wonder if he's forgotten about me. What a bad brother, the worst brother. Lulu spat viciously. Xiao Fei, who was beside her, could only look at Lulu speechlessly. However, just as Lulu was about to say the most hateful words, a voice suddenly sounded in their ears. I know, so this is how you talk about me when I'm not around. It seems my appearance was a mistake. I'd better go home. The voice clearly reached Lulu's ears. Lulu's body froze when she heard it. Her eyes were filled with disbelief. Finally, she slowly turned around and looked at the figure standing 2 meters behind her. She actually did something that made the eyes of the surrounding boys pop out of their socket. In the eyes of countless people, Lulu was a goddess-like figure. Compared to the so-called 10 goddesses, she was much stronger. No, they couldn't be compared at all. Therefore, when they saw Lulu, many people fell in love at first sight and used all kinds of methods to win her heart. Unfortunately, none of them succeeded. As for the other methods, they were also unable to be realized. They used their family's resources, but they still couldn't find out Lulu's identity. This situation made them realize that Lulu's identity wasn't simple. It's very likely that she's the legitimate daughter of a first-rate family. Her mysterious background, extraordinary temperament, and beautiful appearance made Lulu quickly become the target of countless people's pursuit. Originally, Lulu was very polite to all boys and would never overstep her boundaries. But today they understood that Lulu wasn't born this way. Her alienation also depended on who she was facing. After running a step, Lulu directly threw herself at Lu Feng. At this time, she was still 2 meters away from Lu Feng. With her body, there was no way she could fall into Lu Feng's arms. Seeing this, Lu Feng only smiled dotingly. In the blink of an eye, he appeared in front of Lulu. At this time, Lulu accurately fell into Lu Feng's arms. "Didn't you say you'd come to see me often? Why are you only here now?" As if remembering something, Lulu stood up from Lu Feng's arms. At this moment, she was filled with anger. Lu Feng helplessly smiled bitterly. "Lulu, you should know that I have too many things to do. That place is very dangerous. The slightest carelessness will cause you to fall into the abyss. As soon as I came back, I came to see you." Lu Feng's words were somewhat against his will. It has been 2 months since he came back. The first thing Lu Feng did when he came back was Yuyo Qingran. As for the rest, he had completely forgotten about it. Until Yuyo Qingran was safe, Lu Feng thought of other things. Of course, this didn't mean that Lulu wasn't important to Lu Feng. It was because Lu Feng knew that Lulu wouldn't be in danger. Compared to Yuyo Qingran, simply seeing Lulu wasn't the most important thing. Although what Lu Feng said was a lie, at this moment there was no flaw in it. At least, Lulu believed it. Her smiling face was the best proof. "In that case, I'll forgive you for the time being. In the future, remember to come and see me at all times, okay?" After saying this, she fiercely looked at Lu Feng. Lu Feng didn't answer, he just lovingly smiled again. He reached out and gently scratched Lulu's hair until Lulu was slightly dissatisfied. He finally stopped. "This time, I won't leave. I'll accompany you for a while. I'll also study here for a while and become your senior brother." For Lulu, this is definitely a surprise, a shocking joy. She looked at Lu Feng with some disbelief. Until Lu Feng fiercely nodded, she finally jumped up in joy. Looking at Lulu's excited expression, Lu Feng's eyes became more doting. "I thought our goddess Lulu wouldn't be moved by anyone. Tell me, who is this handsome guy? Which family's disciple?" Xiaofei looked at Lu Feng, her eyes slightly shining. Girls can become goddesses because of their excellence. Naturally, boys can also become goddesses. In the headquarters, in addition to the 10 goddesses, there are also 10 male gods. Of course, compared to the 10 goddesses, these 10 male gods are real male gods. Each and every one of them had a noble status, outstanding talent, and a terrifying family background. After all, boys like to show off, and there are often conflicts between them, so it's easy for others to know of their existence. However, in Xiaofei's eyes, Lu Feng's existence is not inferior to the 10 male gods in any way. In fact, he's much more outstanding. It's not that she knows Lu Feng's identity, it's all just a feeling. Lu Feng's appearance is enough to make him an existence like a male god. Moreover, she feels the kind of temperament on Lu Feng's body that no one else has given her before. Although she doesn't know Lu Feng's identity, she doesn't know Lu Feng's talent, Xiaofei believes that Lu Feng is definitely a disciple of an aristocratic family. Because other than aristocratic families, there is no other power that can cultivate such a person with such an extraordinary temperament. Hearing Xiaofei's words, Lulu revealed a mischievous expression. This expression caused everyone around her, including Xiaofei, to be slightly stunned. She has known Lulu for so long, but she has never seen Lulu reveal such an expression. Xiaofei knows that the person in front of her must have an extremely deep relationship with Lulu. If not, then she would never reveal such an expression. Lulu took Lu Feng's hand and pulled him in front of Xiaofei. She said with a proud face, "Xiaofei, this is my cousin. How is it? Is he as outstanding as I said?" Chapter 554. Hearing this, Xiaofei was slightly surprised. She didn't expect that Lulu actually had a cousin. Although she didn't know if his existence was really as outstanding and terrifying as Lulu said, but just looking at his appearance and temperament, it was really similar to Lulu's description. Sizing up Lu Feng didn't know whether to laugh or cry. After a long time, Xiaofei finally nodded and said, "Not bad. It's just that I don't know if his strength is as terrifying as you said it was. Lulu looked at Xiaofei somewhat unhappily. My cousin is definitely powerful, no. It's terrifying. In the current world, he is the number one, no one can compare to him. After saying this, Lulu's face was still filled with a proud expression. Lulu had witnessed several terrifying battles of Lu Feng. The most glorious moment, the one that shocked Lulu the most, was when Lu Feng had transformed into a Buddha. At that time, Lu Feng faced hundreds of monstrous geniuses and monsters from various major races. Any one of them was much, much stronger than these students, and any one of them was much, much stronger than Lu Feng. But facing Lu Feng, they were almost completely annihilated. When Lulu recalled the scene of Lu Feng casually taking a step and the scene of a piece of land falling, her eyes were filled with spirit. Because even her cousin, Crown Prince of Heavenly Tao, Wang Qingyun, had never been so calm and easily killed countless geniuses. In Lulu's heart, everything Lu Feng did at that time was turned into ashes with a snap of a finger. This was the best way to describe it. Therefore, in Lulu's heart, Lu Feng's number one was unparalleled at that time, the only ruler of the universe. However, her guess was more or less correct. After the battle with the Master of the Six Paths, Lu Feng defeated the immortal kings and demon kings and returned to the throne of the War of the Kings. It could be said that Lu Feng was recognized by the entire world as the supreme existence closest to the Emperor's Tao domain. Moreover, with the power from that battle and the title of Master of the Six Tao, Lu Feng was recognized as the number one monarch battle throughout history. Unfortunately, Lulu didn't know about these things, and even if she did know, she wouldn't want to tell these people. She knew that if she said it out loud, these people would not believe her. Of course, Lulu did not want to say it out loud, because in her opinion, all of these belonged to her. Xiaofei looked at Lulu helplessly. She knew Lulu's character. Every time she talked about her cousin, she would be in high spirits. And this time, seeing the real person, it was even more so. In Lulu's ears, she simply couldn't bear to hear others speak ill of her cousin. Lu Feng smiled and looked at Xiaofei. You're Lulu's classmate, right? Thank you for taking care of her for the past 6 months. Lu Feng knew Lulu's character. She had suffered so much in the past, and her heart was incomparably fragile. For her safety, Lu Feng allowed her to come to the Lu family by herself. Although she eventually came to the Federal University, all of this reflected Lulu's loneliness. After more than half a year, Lulu was no longer the Lulu of the past. The fact that she could say such witty words undoubtedly proved that the current Lulu had become incomparably cheerful. She had completely released her nature from the depths of her heart. Lu Feng was happy for Lulu from the bottom of his heart. He knew that all of this was the influence of the surrounding environment. If it weren't for her classmates taking good care of her, Lulu definitely wouldn't have become like this. Therefore, Lu Feng was grateful to these people from the bottom of his heart. Hearing this, Xiaofei, who had always been carefree, actually showed a rare blush on her face. Cousin, I can call you that, right? Lu Feng smiled and nodded. You're Lulu's classmate, a good friend, you can call me whatever you want. Xiaofei smiled shyly. Actually, Lulu's personality has always been like this, but maybe she didn't want to let go in the past. The fact that she became like this today has nothing to do with us, it's all because of Lulu's own acceptance. So, you don't have to say any words of thanks. Of course, if you want to thank us, then treat us to a good meal. That should be fine, right? Lu Feng chuckled. Of course. You guys decide the time. I'll be studying at the Federal University for a while, so I have plenty of time. Hearing that Lu Feng was also a student at the Federal University, Xiaofei showed a strange expression. She naturally knew how difficult it was to get into the Federal University. Of course, according to Lulu, with Lu Feng's aptitude, it was not a problem for him to get into the Federal University. However, if he wanted to get in during the abnormal enrollment period, It undoubtedly showed that Lu Feng's background was strong, or that he was really outstanding. All these thoughts were completed in a very short period of time. Xiaofei's face was full of smiles. She then asked, "Cousin Lulu, what class are you in? If this is the case, we can come and play with you when we're free." Lu Feng nodded slightly. "I should be in the special class of the sophomore psyche faculty, but I just came and haven't had a day of classes yet. If you want to find me, you're welcome at any time." Xiaofei really smiled when she heard Lu Feng's words. She looked at Lulu very proudly and smiled very proudly. Suddenly, Lu Feng seemed to have thought of something. He looked at Lulu beside him and said, "Lulu, you don't have a car yet, right?" Lu Feng knew Lulu's personality. After coming to the Federal University, Lulu would definitely not ask for anything from the Lu family. Even if these things were nothing to the Lu family, Lulu would not ask for them. After all, Lulu didn't like the Lu family very much. It was because of the Lu family's resolute attitude that caused her childhood to be dark. Lulu nodded slightly and looked at Lu Feng in confusion. Lu Feng smiled gently. "When I bought a car this afternoon, I also bought one for you. When you have time, you can drive it from my dorm." Lulu's eyes flashed with surprise when she heard this. She suddenly jumped up and kissed Lu Feng fiercely. Lulu was a psyche master. A psyche master was different from a warrior. Their bodies were very strong, so a short distance was nothing for a warrior. However, it was different for a psyche master. Before they became a psyche master, their bodies were basically no different from a normal person's. Of course, what made Lulu happy was not that she had a car, but that this car was a gift from Lu Feng. This represented a kind of care. And what Lulu needed was this kind of care. Hearing this, Lulu didn't say anything, but Xiaofei couldn't help but ask, "Cousin Lulu, what kind of car did you buy for Lulu? You have to know that ordinary cars are not good enough for our Princess Lulu." Lulu glared at Xiaofei. In her opinion, even if it was 10,000 Federation dollars, she would like it. As long as it was a gift from Lu Feng, she would like it. Lu Feng smiled slowly and said, "Of course it can't be too ordinary. Otherwise, how could it be worthy of the title of Goddess Lulu?" When she heard Lu Feng say the word goddess, Lulu showed a rare blush. She knew that Lu Feng had heard her conversation with Xiaofei. "Then what did you buy?" After saying this, Xiaofei looked at Lu Feng with a money-grubber expression. In her mind, the suspension car that Lu Feng was gifting her would cost at least $1 million. In fact, it might even be worth tens of millions of dollars. Lu Feng said, "It's a car from the Crystal series." Crystal series? Lulu was slightly confused. She didn't know much about the car series because she usually didn't pay much attention to these things. However, just because she didn't know about it didn't mean that others didn't know about it. At least Xiaofei, who was next to her, had done some research on these things. His eyes widened as he stared at Lu Feng in shock. The Crystal series? Is it the most luxurious Crystal series among the hover cars designed for girls? Lu Feng smiled and nodded. Xiaofei took a deep breath when she saw Lu Feng admit it. The cheapest car in the Crystal series costs more than 10 million Federation coins. Lulu, your cousin is so good to you. I also want to have a cousin like him. Seeing Xiaofei's envious expression, Lulu's face showed a hint of pride. She knew that with Lu Feng's status, 10 million Federation coins was really nothing. After all, this was only equivalent to a few thousand God item points. Back in the Outland battlefield, she could easily get hundreds of millions of God item points. If that amount was converted to Federation coins, it would be trillions. Therefore, this little thing was really nothing. However, although it wasn't very expensive, it represented Lulu's sincerity. Therefore, Lulu was really proud at this moment. Then, is it the Z1 model or the Y1 model? The two models Xiaofei mentioned were the more common models in the Crystal series, but they were also more than 10 million. In her opinion, Lu Feng should have bought these two models for Xiaofei. I bought it called the Crystal Heart. I think it's the most suitable for Lulu. When Xiaofei heard Lu Feng mention the Crystal Heart, she sucked in a breath of cold air. Crystal Heart? Really? The Crystal Heart? The Crystal Heart, the most expensive, luxurious, and top-notch crystal series. Lu Feng nodded slightly. At this moment, Xiaofei let out a shriek. Lulu, I want to be your cousin, I want to be your sister-in-law. Hearing this, Lu Feng was stunned. Lulu, on the other hand, had a helpless expression. She pushed Xiaofei with all her might, and finally managed to shake Xiaofei awake from her madness. You don't have a chance, I already have a sister-in-law. Hearing this, Xiaofei's face turned pale with disappointment. However, she looked at Lu Feng with incomparable excitement. Cousin Lu Feng, you're actually so rich. That's the Crystal Heart. I heard it costs more than 500 million Federation coins. Heavens! More than 500 million federal coins, what a terrifying astronomical figure. You actually gave it to me just like that. No, you have to give me one too. Even if it's the worst one, even if it's a million yuan one, it's fine too. Is that okay? Is that okay, Cousin Lulu? As she spoke, Xiaofei walked to Lu Feng's side and shook Lu Feng's other arm. Seeing this, Lulu looked at Xiaofei with a slightly angry expression. Hey! He Lu Fei, this is my cousin. He's not yours. Go play somewhere else, don't come over and embarrass me. After saying this, Lulu looked at Xiaofei with disdain. Unfortunately, after being stimulated by the Crystal Heart, He Lu Fei's eyes were glowing. She didn't care about anything else. She kept shaking Lu Feng's arm and looked at Lu Feng pleadingly. Lu Feng smiled helplessly. Okay, no problem. Just let me know when you've taken a liking to it. I'll pay for you then. Hearing this, He Lu Fei shouted excitedly. She actually danced and danced in front of the crowd. That's great. Cousin Lulu, why don't I just give myself to you? That way, I won't owe you any favors. Lu Feng could only smile helplessly. Lu Feng didn't say anything, but Lulu was really dissatisfied. In the next moment, the two of them started to quarrel. Chapter 555. Lu Feng's arrival undoubtedly made Lulu feel a little bored. Originally, she didn't want to participate in this kind of gathering. However, with Lu Feng by her side, Lulu felt that this banquet was so interesting for the first time. However, the only thing that made her uncomfortable was that there was a big source of light beside her. That was He Lu Fei, who was shamelessly following her. Many of the surrounding students sensibly retreated to the side. Even if someone saw Lu Feng, they would still respectfully greet Lu Feng. Many people had seen the meeting between Lu Feng and Lulu. Lulu was already the center of attention, so the sudden appearance of a boy who made her so open naturally attracted everyone's attention. Plus, Lu Feng didn't deliberately lower his voice, so these people easily heard the conversation between Lu Feng and Lulu. At this moment, they all knew that Lu Feng wasn't Lulu's boyfriend. He was Lulu's cousin. Moreover, this cousin was such a terrifying person. He had casually given his cousin a suspension car worth 500 million Federation dollars. With Lu Feng's temperament and wealth, plus Lu Feng's identity as Lulu's cousin, the people who knew about it all showed a look of awe towards Lu Feng. Lulu was naturally the happiest that these people didn't come to disturb them. Of course, she hoped that He Lu Fei, this huge source of light, would leave as soon as possible. Unfortunately, her hopes were dashed. No matter where the two of them went, He Lu Fei always followed them closely. This made Lulu grit her teeth helplessly. Although many people present knew about Lu Feng's identity, not everyone knew about it. Soon, the news of Lulu hugging a strange man spread throughout the university. The developed use of the Sky Network was vividly displayed at this moment. In the beginning, Lulu and Lu Feng just wandered back and forth in this small area. However, as time went by, Lulu wanted to go to other places to take a look. Lu Feng, who had originally planned to accompany Lulu to relax, naturally didn't care. Today, he was just following Lulu's wishes. However, not long after they left, a troublesome matter came. The reason for that was because the more they traveled, the more people they saw. Lu Feng also felt more and more strange gazes directed at him. Many people were glaring at Lu Feng with resentment in their eyes. Lu Feng had seen this kind of gaze too many times. Back when he was in the foreign battlefields, he saw this kind of gaze all the time. However, back then, he could take revenge and kill anyone who didn't submit or provoked him. But he couldn't do it here. Because this was the Federal University, the people around him were all his fellow humans. The Federal University was his teacher's school. No matter how dissatisfied Lu Feng was, he couldn't do anything here. That would violate the rules of the Federal University. Because of these reasons, Lu Feng couldn't wantonly kill these late-stage talents of the human race like he had done to the foreign races. Most importantly, they hadn't done anything overboard. If they had really done something that Lu Feng couldn't accept, perhaps Lu Feng wouldn't have considered it. An hour had passed. The worst thing that Lu Feng had encountered was that someone had deliberately stopped Lu Feng and glared at him fiercely. Other than that, nothing else happened. Lulu didn't care about this at all. She knew how terrifying Lu Feng's existence was. In the current world, there were countless people who wanted to kill Lu Feng, including the supreme existences of the various peak Overlord races. However, Lu Feng was still alive and well. In fact, his strength was even more terrifying. In the foreign battlefields, Lu Feng was still terrifying to an unfathomable degree without anyone's help. At that time, he had relied on his own strength to establish an immortal reputation. One had to know that the people who wanted to kill Lu Feng back then were all peak existences of the various major races. Any one of them was enough to sweep through everything. If those world-shocking existences couldn't do it, then these students naturally couldn't. Therefore, Lulu wasn't worried about Lu Feng and the hostile gazes of these Federal University students. Lulu wasn't worried because she really knew everything. However, Lu Fei was different. Although she saw that Lu Feng's appearance and temperament were similar to what Lulu had described, she didn't believe that Lu Feng's power was the same as what Lulu had described. In her eyes, Lu Feng might be very talented, but compared to those geniuses of the Federal University, he was still lacking. No matter how strong he was only on par with them. Facing so much hostility would be very detrimental to his future development. After all, Lu Feng had said that he would study at the Federal University in the future. Lu Feng didn't care about this. The gazes of the surrounding people didn't affect Lu Feng at all. His main focus was now on Lulu. However, Lulu's mind wasn't all on playing. Lulu had already noticed Lu Fei's strange behavior. Finally, Lulu couldn't bear to see Lu Fei's nervous face and said, "Little Fei, you don't have to worry about anything. Cousin isn't as simple as you think. No matter how big the matter is, he can shoulder it. Isn't that right, cousin?" After saying this, Lulu looked at Lu Feng with a proud face. Lu Feng chuckled and pinched Lulu's nose affectionately, causing her to giggle. "As long as it's our Princess Lulu's matter, no matter how big it is, cousin will shoulder it for you." Lu Feng definitely has the capital to say this. Looking at the relationship between Lu Feng and Lulu, Lu Fei's eyes flashed with a trace of envy. After all, having such a doting brother is something anyone would want to look forward to. Okay, just pretend I was worried for nothing. You don't have to show how close you two are." After saying this, Lu Fei deliberately put on a look of disdain. Lulu smiled and jumped to Lu Fei's side. "What's wrong, envious? If you have the ability, go find a brother like him." After saying this, Lulu ran out and grabbed Lu Feng's arm, swaying as she walked in another direction. The further they went, the more people they saw. Gradually, someone posted a message on the Sky Network and many people came to watch. Lulu had been studying at the Federal University for more than half a year. She was beautiful, and with that vicissitude temperament and mysterious background, it could be said that her status in the school was much higher than the so-called 10 goddesses. There were at least 8,000 people who openly pursued her, if not 10,000. Among them, there was no lack of aristocratic family members and noble sons of financial group. But up until now, Lulu had never given any face to these people. Today, Lulu was being so intimate with a boy, this naturally caused many people to be curious and gossipy. Unknowingly, 2 hours had passed. According to the usual time of the meal, it would end around 9:30. Now, it was nearing the end of the meal. This time, the happiest person was Lulu. If it hadn't been for Lufei's invitation, Lulu would have just stayed in the dormitory. Who would have thought that she would run into her cousin here? Therefore, for the past 2 hours, she had been playing in an unusually relaxed and comfortable manner. Before they knew it, Lu Feng and the other two had already arrived at the center of the room. Usually, at the end of the meal, the school's leaders would come here and have an intermittent interaction. This time, it was the same. "Student Lu Feng, so you're here too. How was it? Not bad, right?" Just as the three of them were about to leave, a familiar voice suddenly rang in their ears. Of course, this familiarity was only for Lu Feng. As for Lulu and Lufei, they weren't that familiar with this voice. Lu Feng turned around and saw the person walking over. He smiled faintly. "It's okay, the atmosphere is pretty good." Hearing Lu Feng's words, the person smiled faintly and nodded. "Then in the future, Lu Feng, you should participate in more of these activities." Lu Feng smiled faintly and nodded without saying anything. At this moment, Lulu and Lufei finally recognized the person who spoke. Lulu, who knew everything about Lu Feng, didn't feel anything. She just stood there quietly. However, Lufei was different. At this moment she was completely shocked, an indescribable shock. Because this person was the director of the Federal University. He was the real director of the 4 grades from 1st year to 4th year. Although Director Zhang was only the director of a school, what was the Federal University? On the surface, it was the largest university in the Federation. It was the source of countless talents in the Federation. Its influence was so wide that even the Federation government had to be wary of it. And on a real level, the Federal University was publicly recognized as one of the 3 peak powers of the human race. It was the most terrifying peak power that could be compared to the human king and the Lu family Federation government. The Federal University, whether on the surface or in the dark, was a terrifying existence that everyone feared. Although Director Zhang was only one of the directors, he was the director of the Federal University. In fact, he was one of the most important directors. With such an existence, even the family heads of the first-rate families didn't dare to speak too much when they saw him. In front of Director Zhang, all geniuses had to be obedient. Even the top 10 male idols on campus had to respectfully call Director Zhang director when they saw him. In the eyes of most people, Director Zhang wasn't a cold and ruthless person. However, he was abnormally strict and intimidating. At his current position, who had ever seen such a kind Director Zhang, let alone the modesty in his words? Although Lufei wasn't old, it didn't mean that she didn't know anything. To be able to become a peak genius psyche master, she had a powerful force behind her. Although it couldn't be compared to the human king and the Lu family, it was still very terrifying. How could Lufei, who came from such a powerful force, be naive when it came to judging people? Chapter 556. Therefore, Lufei could tell at a glance that there was a hint of respect in Director Zhang's eyes. And it was this expression that really shocked Lufei. She really couldn't imagine that the existence of cousin Lulu actually made Director Zhang talk with awe and with an attitude of looking up to him. That kind of expression was only shown by absolute weaklings. Director Zhang is actually a weakling in front of Lulu's cousin. Then, what kind of terrifying existence is Lulu's cousin? Lu Fei was speechless. At this moment, her mind was in chaos. Gradually, she finally understood why Lulu didn't care about the hostile eyes of the people around her. Why she had so much confidence in her cousin, and why she said those words to her. That's right, if Lulu's cousin could really make Director Zhang respect him so much, then these students were nothing at all. Finally, after taking a deep breath, Lu Fei gradually calmed herself down. At this time, Lu Feng also bid farewell to Director Zhang. Seeing Lu Feng's attitude, Lu Fei was even more certain of her guess. This was because when Lu Feng faced Director Zhang, he had never treated him like a director. He was completely calm. It was as if in his eyes, Director Zhang was no different from an ordinary student. Undoubtedly, such an attitude allowed Lu Fei to understand one thing, and that was that Lu Feng's identity was truly incomparably noble to the extreme. Otherwise, he wouldn't have treated such an important director of the Federal University so calmly. After leaving the central area, Lu Feng took the two of them directly to his villa. He had told Lulu that the car he had bought for her was still parked in front of his villa. Originally, the last half an hour was supposed to be the climax of the whole meal. After all, the main directors would all be present at this time. Most students hoped to leave a good impression in front of the teachers, so no one was willing to leave at this time. However, the three of them were different. Lu Feng and Lulu didn't care at all. Their identities were far beyond those of the directors. As for Lu Fei, she was completely captivated by Lu Feng's mysteriousness. Besides, in her eyes, the Crystal Heart was much more important than this so-called gathering and leaving a good impression in front of the head of department. Soon, the three of them arrived in front of Lu Feng's apartment in the hover car. Lulu's eyes lit up when she saw the luxurious villa. "Cousin, your dorm is really big and luxurious." Indeed, Lu Feng also noticed. Although the special admissions students had their own private residences, there were very few who had such a luxurious villa like his. At the very least, Lu Feng hadn't seen a second villa like his in the surrounding area. Chuckling, Lu Feng said, "If you like, you can move in and live with me. Anyway, I don't have much time here, so it's up to you." Lulu hesitated for a moment but shook her head in the end. She didn't really care about enjoyment. Plus, she had two good friends in her residence. If she came here, and Lu Feng could accompany her every day, then Lulu might be very happy. Unfortunately, Lu Feng already made it clear that he wouldn't stay here often. Even if she came here, she would be alone. In that case, she might as well stay with her two good friends. "No, cousin. In our dormitory, a few sisters live together. You should know that in order to apply, we spent a lot of effort. As members of the special admissions class, they all had their own private residences. Although it wasn't as extravagant as Lu Feng's villa, the conditions weren't bad. Later on, it was because they had requested to live together." Lu Feng nodded slightly. If only Lulu moved in, Lu Feng wouldn't mind. After all, Lulu was his cousin. However, if Lulu's classmates moved in together, Lu Feng would be a little embarrassed. After all, they were girls. If they lived here, it would inevitably cause misunderstandings. As Lu Feng and Lulu were talking, they didn't notice the strange look on Lu Fei's face. Finally, after seeing that the two of them were done talking, Lu Fei said to Lu Feng, "Cousin Lulu, what is your identity in the end? The school even gave you this villa." Lu Feng was slightly taken aback. However, he quickly understood that Director Zhang must have specially arranged a very good position for him to express his goodwill. However, Lu Feng didn't expose this. "I don't know. The school arranged it for me, so I lived here." "Why? Is there something special about this villa?" Lu Fei's eyes widened slightly. "Something special? Of course. Moreover, it's very special. Cousin Lulu, do you know? Although this villa also belongs to a student, since it was built, the number of people who lived here can be counted with one's fingers. Anyone who walked out is enough to leave their name in the school's history. I didn't expect the school to value you so much and put you on the same level as those people. Speaking until here, Lu Fei still has an unusual look of sighing. Hearing this, Lu Feng didn't say anything. However, Lulu on the side showed an unhappy look. What's wrong with the school? They actually gave Cousin such a villa. What kind of person is Cousin? Since ancient times, no one can be compared to Cousin. This is a bit too much. Lulu's words made Lu Fei quite speechless. She didn't expect that Lulu's so-called too much was actually referring to this. She already knew that Lulu worships this cousin very much, but she didn't expect it to be to this extent. However, thinking about it carefully, combined with Lu Feng's previous performance and his mysterious identity, Lu Feng should be worshipped like this. Okay. I already know, you don't have to say anything. Lu Fei is slightly speechless looking at Lulu. She really can't take it anymore and can only open her mouth to persuade Lulu. Moreover, this villa is already the best among the Federal University's student residences. Those who have the qualifications to live here are really too few. Even the school's top 10 experts only have this kind of treatment when they become famous in their second or third year. Cousin just came here and he's already able to enjoy this kind of treatment. It's already very scary. After a moment, she looked at Lu Feng with a trace of doubt and asked, Cousin Lulu, I can't always call you that. No matter what, we can be considered to know each other. Then can you tell me your name? Lu Feng lightly smiled. He didn't intend to hide anything. Without hesitation, Lu Feng directly said, My name is Lu Feng. Lu Feng? Lu Fei slightly pondered for a moment. Although she isn't the descendant of an aristocratic family, there is a relatively strong force behind her. Unfortunately, among the famous people she knows, there isn't a name like Lu Feng. Lu Feng's level, in the universe, can be said to be really famous. The top geniuses and monsters of all the major races tremble in fear. Unfortunately, only the real top existences, those famous monsters or geniuses of other races, or those terrifying people above the god level can know of Lu Feng's existence. Others, even if they are underage geniuses, can't come into contact with this level of plane. Obviously, Lu Fei is such an existence. Of course, not only her, in the entire Federal University, there aren't many people who know of Lu Feng. After all, Lu Feng's weakest reputation is in the human race. Oh right, are you really the descendant of an aristocratic family? At this moment, Lu Fei seems to have thought of something. Lu Feng's identity is definitely incomparably noble. After all, Lu Feng is the first person she has seen that Director Zhang is so respectful. Since Lu Feng was not a famous monster from any of the aristocratic families that she knew of, then the reason why Director Zhang was so afraid of him must be his identity. Lu Feng smiled and nodded lightly. Lu Fei looked at Lu Feng and sucked in a breath of cold air. The Lu family. You are actually the descendant of the Federation's first-rate aristocratic family, the Lu family. No wonder. The first-rate aristocratic family, the Lu family. In the eyes of ordinary people, this is already a godlike existence. After all, in the current world, there are only 3 aristocratic families with the surname Lu. One is a second-rate aristocratic family. However, even the young master of a second-rate aristocratic family wouldn't be able to make Director Zhang so respectful. In that case, Lu Feng can only be from a first-rate aristocratic family. According to the legends, he should be the descendant of the number 1 aristocratic family, the Lu family. Of course, as for the third Lu family, the king of the Lu family, she didn't even dare to think about it. After all, the name of the king of the Lu family could no longer be described with the word terrifying. Lu Feng didn't admit or deny it. He just stood there with a smile on his face. At this moment, Lu Fei patted her head a little in annoyance. That's not right. Lulu's surname is Lu. You are her cousin, yet your surname is also Lu. Could it be that Lulu is also a descendant of the Lu family? If Lu Feng was the son of Lulu's father's sister, then Lulu must also be a member of the Lu family. That's not it. Lulu's father's surname isn't Lu. Her surname is Lu, so there are some hidden reasons. Lu Feng didn't continue explaining, because he knew that it was something that made Lulu sad. Lu Feng didn't want Lulu to be sad anymore. Hearing this, Lu Fei vaguely seemed to understand something. She gently nodded and pretended not to be interested. However, after a moment, she looked at Lu Feng with an incomparably surprised gaze. No wonder Lulu admires you so much. It turns out that you are actually a descendant of the first-rate aristocratic family, the Lu family. You are a direct descendant. You must be a direct descendant. Otherwise, Director Zhang wouldn't treat you like that. If you are a descendant of the Lu family, then Lulu's description is not bad. Moreover, I'm afraid that an ordinary aristocratic family wouldn't be able to cultivate an existence like you. You must be a descendant of the first-rate aristocratic family, the Lu family. You must be a direct descendant. Moreover, you must be a relatively noble existence. That must be it. My guess is absolutely correct. Chapter 557. Lu Fei seemed to have sunk into her own conjecture. Everything seemed so reasonable to her. Now, she actually started deducing according to her own thoughts. She even looked like she was right. At this point, Lu Feng could only smile helplessly. Finally, Lulu couldn't stand it anymore. She nudged Lu Fei, who was still immersed in her own conjecture. All right, Xiao Fei. Stop guessing. This time we came here for the suspension car. For the suspension car. Do you still want to drive it or not? Hearing Lulu's words, Lu Fei instantly woke up. She had followed them here because Lulu had promised that she would be the one to drive the car in a while. In Lu Fei's heart, the temptation of the suspension car was greater than anything else. She quickly looked at Lu Feng eagerly. Lu Feng's smile continued. He pointed in the direction of his garage and said, "The Crystal Heart is parked in there." Hearing this, Lu Fei screamed and ran towards the garage in a few small steps. When Lulu saw this, she didn't care about anything else and also ran over there. "Cousin bought it for me. I want to be the first to touch it." Looking at the two bouncing figures, Lu Feng let out a smile that came from the bottom of his heart. Ah! A few seconds after the two entered the garage, a scream suddenly came. Lu Feng could tell that it was Lu Fei's voice. He frowned slightly. In the next second, Lu Feng disappeared. When he reappeared, he was already standing beside the two girls. "What's wrong?" Seeing Lu Fei's slightly dazed expression, Lu Feng was slightly confused. When he entered, he already used his divine sense to check. There didn't seem to be any danger here. The two of them didn't suffer any injuries. But when Lu Feng followed Lu Fei's gaze, he finally understood why the girl screamed. Lu Feng didn't just leave the Crystal Heart he gave Lulu here. He also left his Emperor here. Right now, Lu Fei was looking at Lu Feng's Emperor parked in the garage. It's actually an Emperor. There are less than 100 of them in the Federation. Cousin Lu Feng, you're too amazing, too great. You even have an Emperor. At this moment, Lu Fei had completely lost her composure. She stood on the spot and shouted loudly. The excitement on her face could not be concealed at all. Lu Feng didn't know much about suspension cars. Although he had heard from the beautiful waitress that there were less than 100 Emperor cars in the entire Federation and the entire universe, Lu Feng really didn't care too much about this. He chose the Emperor because he really liked it. That's all. It's just a suspension car. Lu Feng waved his hand helplessly, indicating that it was just a hover car. Hearing this, Lu Fei was a bit unwilling. She stood there and started explaining to Lu Feng how precious and rare the emperor was. Finally, when she started talking about the history of the emperor, Lu Feng had no choice but to surrender. Fine, fine, fine. I'm afraid of you. In the future, if I don't use it, you can drive it whenever you want. Everything is up to you. Hearing this, Lu Fei was slightly stunned, but in the next moment she suddenly screamed and jumped up. Looking at her excited expression, Lu Feng could only look at Lulu beside him. At this moment, Lulu also had a helpless expression on her face. Cousin, this girl has always liked suspension cars. When she goes crazy, she forgets everything. It's okay, just wait a bit, just wait a bit. Hearing this, Lu Feng could only helplessly look at Lu Fei, who was constantly surrounding the emperor and shouting. At night, Lu Fei still drove the emperor away. This was Lu Feng's idea. He really couldn't stand Lu Fei's craziness. Originally, Lu Feng didn't need to rest. However, at night, he still had something important to do. This wasn't to learn about psychic knowledge from Dao Songtian. Lu Feng needed to condense his own martial path avatar. After entering the upheaval realm, his martial path avatar was still at the 6th grade. This was unacceptable to Lu Fenglai. Although this increase didn't seem like much. However, this was directly related to Lu Feng's future development. The existence of a martial path avatar was very important to Lu Feng. After all, it was one of the keys to reaching the Divine King's great path. During the journey from the Lu family to the Cymbidium, Lu Feng had already started condensing his martial path avatar while Yu was resting. It was a pity that after nearly a month of condensing, he still hadn't completed it. This incident made Lu Feng even more aware of the horror of his martial path avatar. If it were someone else, it might only take a day or even half a day to complete it. However, he still hadn't completed it after nearly a month. It should be known that his martial path avatar was a terrifying existence. The speed at which it absorbed divine objects was even more extreme. The resources and time consumed during this month's condensing were probably enough for thousands of ordinary people to condense the 6th grade to the 7th grade. After one night, Lu Feng finally consumed a huge amount of divine objects and further condensed his martial path avatar. Although there was still a certain distance from the realm of level 7 great success, this distance was already very close. At dawn, Lu Feng finally opened his eyes. Today was the first day of school. They didn't have many classes, only a few classes a week. However, on the first day of school, all the classes and all the students had to attend classes at the same time. Lu Feng didn't want any special privileges. Moreover, he also wanted to experience the feeling of being a student again. After all, he was only 18 years old now. After walking out of the villa, Lu Feng remembered that his emperor seemed to have been driven away, so he didn't go to the garage to drive his car. He walked to a stop sign and waited for a few minutes until the intercampus hover bus arrived. After getting on the hover bus, Lu Feng spent nearly half an hour before finally arriving at the teaching location of the specially recruited class of the sophomore psyche department. Looking at the magnificent building in front of him, Lu Feng smiled slightly. Unlike the existence of the warrior department, the psyche department was often synonymous with nobility. Even in the military, psychic masters were protected in every way. Even if they were placed in the most difficult army, the conditions of food and accommodation were still the best. This was the special treatment of psyche masters. This very luxurious building in front of him was obviously only owned by the psyche department. That's right. If this building was given to a warrior, I'm afraid that it would be destroyed in a few days. In the warrior department there were usually practical drills. The price for this was that some warriors couldn't control their strength and destroyed the main body of the teaching building. This kind of situation often happened. After all, The weakest person who could enter the specially recruited class of the Federal University was a peak advanced warrior or even a warrior directly. A powerful blow from an advanced warrior was enough to collapse a building with dozens of floors in an instant. As for warriors, because they comprehended the power of heaven and earth and entered the martial arts hall, their destructive power increased by hundreds or thousands of times. No matter how sturdy the building was, it wouldn't be able to withstand their destruction. Therefore, the warrior department's buildings were usually sturdy and simple. I never thought that there would be a day when I, Lu Feng, would step into a classroom again. A year ago, when he had entered the extraterritorial battlefield because of the king of the chaotic land, Lu Feng had thought that he would spend most of his youth there. However, Lu Feng never thought that he would be able to enter such a terrifying realm in such a short period of time. Even now, he could easily kill any god existence. After sizing it up slightly, Lu Feng still walked in. The first class of the Psyche department started at 9:30 in the morning. When Lu Fenglai arrived, it was only 8:50 in the morning. There was no doubt that when Lu Feng walked into the lecture hall, there were very few people inside. Out of the 300 specially recruited Psyche department students, there were less than 10 people present at the moment. When Lu Feng walked into the lecture hall, some people looked at Lu Feng. After they saw Lu Feng, their eyes never moved away. One was like this, two were like this, and all of them were like this. In the end, when Lu Fenglai sat in the front seat, the students in the lecture hall looked at Lu Feng. Lu Feng, who had been a little confused about all this, understood after thinking for a while. It had to be known that, except for him, the others had been studying here for a year and a half. Although there were only a few classes every week, after getting along for more than a year, even if they didn't know each other, they were definitely familiar with each other's faces. Lu Feng, on the other hand, was a completely unfamiliar face. How could they not be surprised when they saw him for the first time? Of course, these people were just surprised for a while. After all, they were all students of the General Hospital. They were all true geniuses. It was impossible for them to make a fuss like ordinary people. As if wanting to know the reason Lu Fenglai was here, a student who was closer to Lu Feng finally walked in front of Lu Feng. Looking at Lu Feng, the student hesitated for a moment before asking, "Student, did you come to the wrong place?" He just thought that Lu Feng had come to the wrong lecture hall. After all, in the General Hospital of the Federal University, there were very few cases of students joining classes. It could even be said that there was no such thing. In the specially recruited classes, it was almost impossible to find such a case. Lu Feng looked at him and smiled slightly. "This is the specially recruited class of the Psyche department for sophomores, right?" The student was slightly taken aback, but he still nodded. Lu Feng's smile continued as he gently nodded his head as well. "Then, I didn't come to the wrong place." Looking at the student, Lu Feng stood up and extended his arm. "My name is Lu Feng. I'm also in this class. But in the past year, for some reason, I didn't come to register. It was only a few days ago that I had time to come back." Looking at Lu Feng's arm, the student was really stunned. The Federal University was different from other universities. The system here was abnormally strict. Generally, if you missed a year, you missed it. If you wanted to come to the Federal University to study and enter the specially recruited class, you had to pass the test again. But even if that was the case, the person who came could only start from the first year. There had never been anyone like Lu Feng, who had directly entered the second year of university. Soon, the student reacted. He smiled apologetically and suddenly grabbed Lu Feng's arm. "My name is Huang Qing. I'm the class monitor of this class. I'm sorry about before." His bad attitude was because he misunderstood that Lu Feng wasn't in this class. He was also sorry for being stunned just now. Naturally, Lu Feng didn't care about this. He just smiled slightly and said, "It's okay. In the future, please take care of me in this class." Chapter 558. Lu Feng could clearly sense that Huang Qing's cultivation had already reached the peak of the telekinesis grandmaster level. To be able to become a telekinesis grandmaster at such a young age, he was definitely a terrifying genius. Huang Qing's cultivation speed was absolutely terrifying, regardless of his aptitude. Lu Feng could also sense the terrifying power hidden within Huang Qing's body. He knew that Huang Qing was at least a Federation-level genius. He might even be a super genius at the Federation level. In fact, after thinking about it for a while, Lu Feng understood. How could anyone who could become the class monitor of the specially recruited telekinesis class be simple? Huang Qing had been able to become the class monitor either because of his family background or because of his terrifying aptitude. Lu Feng naturally didn't know much about his family background. However, Lu Feng was very clear about his aptitude. We will be classmates in the future. There's no need to take care of each other. Huang Qing had already sat down beside Lu Feng as he spoke and started chatting with Lu Feng. One had to admit that Huang Qing's social skills were very good. After just half an hour of conversation, Lu Feng already had a very good impression of Huang Qing. During this time, Huang Qing introduced Lu Feng to a lot of information about the students in this class. He also tried many methods to find out more about Lu Feng. However, all his efforts were destined to be in vain. What kind of person was Lu Feng? Although he was only 18 years old, everything he had experienced was something that even the virtual king couldn't experience. In the foreign battlefields, where strength was respected and where many races coexisted and slaughtered each other, he could be like a fish in water. Over here, a genius who had yet to leave school naturally wouldn't be able to get anything from Lu Feng. Finally, when all the students had arrived, Huang Qing also ended his conversation with Lu Feng. At this moment, the teacher had already entered. This is the teacher in charge of the specially recruited class of the Psyche faculty, Zhong Ling. Although she is a woman, Teacher Zhong's strength is incomparably terrifying. According to the introduction on the Sky Network's homepage, she has already reached the level of a beginner King Psyche Master. Lu Feng nodded gently. After all, to be able to become the teacher in charge of a specially recruited class, it would be difficult to make these geniuses listen to him without any strength. However, what surprised Lu Feng was that Zhong Ling was a woman. In the Federation, there were still some female warriors who made up a certain proportion. However, there were very few female psychics. Of course, it wasn't that there weren't any. It was just that there were very few of them. Lu Feng didn't expect to meet one here, and it was even their homeroom teacher. Zhong Ling quietly walked to the podium and slowly glanced at the audience. Although she looked very ordinary as a female psychic, and even a psychic king at that, coupled with the special aura of a psychic, Zhong Ling had a unique charm. Her gaze swept around, and everyone who was swept by her gaze unconsciously straightened their backs. Seeing this scene, Lu Feng's heart was slightly moved by Zhong Ling's degree of control over the students. Zhong Ling scanned the entire class, but when she looked at Lu Feng, there was a slight pause. However, this pause was only for a moment. In the audience, except for Lu Feng, no one else noticed it. Sitting in his seat, Lu Feng's eyes revealed a faint smile. Finally, when everything was done, Zhong Ling's voice slowly sounded. A new semester has begun. What I want to say is that during the opening ceremony, several directors have already made it clear. We have already entered the second half of the second semester of our sophomore year. In half a year's time, you will enter the third year. You should know that during the third year, the school will add an internship course. Therefore, this half a year of study is extremely important. Moreover, I think you should have already heard about it through various channels. In less than 2 months' time, the Quadrennial Academy tournament would be held. Although your current strength is not the strongest in the headquarters, when the time comes, you still have a chance to represent the school. If you don't want to lose face, if you want to make a name for yourself, then in these 2 months you have to do your best to cultivate. Did you hear what I said? The moment her voice fell, all the students answered loudly, "Yes, teacher." Hearing that powerful answer, Zhongling also smiled in satisfaction. She nodded gently, turned on the projection of the Sky Network, and began the first day of class. The first day of class was from 9:30 in the morning to 11:30 in the morning. During this period there was no rest. However, because it was a female teacher, Lu Feng listened very seriously. Unknowingly, the time had completely passed. After the 2-hour class, Lu Feng slowly stood up. At this moment, he had to admit that it was impossible to become a teacher of the headquarters, and even the head teacher of a special class, without some ability. This psychic Wang teacher named Zhongling had a unique understanding of psychic. Some of her ideas were not even heard of by Lu Feng. Everyone stood up and respectfully said goodbye to Zhongling. Then, they began to pack their things and prepared to leave. Lu Feng did the same. He did not have anything to pack, so he stood up and prepared to leave. However, just as Lu Feng was about to leave, Zhongling's voice suddenly sounded. "Student Lu Feng, please wait a moment. I have something to tell you." At this moment, everyone's eyes were focused on Lu Feng. When they saw Lu Feng, these people revealed strange expressions. Except for the first 10 people who came before Lu Feng, the others came much later, so they did not know of Lu Feng's existence. Now that they suddenly saw Lu Feng's unfamiliar face, they were naturally slightly surprised. Seeing the reaction of the people around her, Zhongling smiled gently and said, "I forgot to explain just now. From today onwards, student Lu Feng will be here to study with everyone. Previously, he was a special student of our headquarters Psychic Wang class, but for some reason, he took a year's leave. Now that he has returned, he can join us. I hope that students can unite and progress together in the future." The students all said yes. However, when they looked at Lu Feng, there were all kinds of strange expressions. Lu Feng did not care about these people's expressions at all. He just looked at Zhongling, not knowing why this teacher suddenly called out to him. "Student Lu Feng, come with me." After saying this, Zhongling had already walked out. Since the teacher invited him, Lu Feng naturally could not put on airs and refused to go. Therefore, he obediently followed behind Zhongling and walked out. The two of them walked one after the other until they left the teaching building and came to a more secluded place. Zhongling only stopped when they arrived at a more secluded place. Seeing that the teacher stopped, Lu Feng naturally did the same. Zhongling turned around and quietly looked at Lu Feng. A trace of strangeness flashed in her eyes. After a long time, she finally opened her mouth slowly and said, "Student Lu Feng, Director Zhang has already told me about your general situation. I didn't expect that our school had a monster like you." Lu Feng smiled gently, incomparably indifferent. However, he did not say anything. Lu Feng knew that Dean Zhang would definitely greet his class teacher. However, it was impossible for him to explain everything about himself. Even if Lu Feng didn't care about it, the others didn't dare to spread his identity. After all, his identity was too terrifying and involved too many people. "In the future, I'll have to trouble you to take care of me." Zhongling smiled gently and said, "I heard from Dean Zhang that Lu Feng's talent is very terrifying. You're a real monster. I just don't know what level Lu Feng is at now." Lu Feng was silent for a moment. His level? Currently, his martial artist level was at the peak of the perfect stage, and his psychic level was at the peak of the King Psychic Master level. Compared to Zhongling in front of him, Lu Feng's psychic cultivation was a full 3 levels higher than hers. If one were to calculate combat power, then Zhongling was far from being comparable. However, this made Lu Feng feel awkward, and he was too embarrassed to say it. Could it be that he wanted to tell Zhongling his specific strength level now? If that was the case, Zhongling would definitely feel awkward. After all, her student was much stronger than her. No one had encountered such a situation before. After hesitating for a moment, Lu Feng smiled gently and said, "Teacher, my strength is a bit special. You'll know my specific level in the future. However, I'm very strong, very strong." Lu Feng could only say so. To be honest, he did not like to tell lies, even if it was a white lie. After all, he was an emperor. An emperor did not need to lie to cover up anything. When Zhong Ling heard Lu Feng's words, she was slightly stunned. She really did not expect Lu Feng to give her such an answer. Of course, this kind of daze only lasted for a moment. Since Lu Feng does not want to say, then I won't force you. However, you have to give me a rough idea. This way, I can make arrangements for the future. A monster, this is a monster. After all, in recent years, no monster has appeared in the Federal University. Now that a monster suddenly appeared, how could she not make good use of it? One must know that in less than 2 months, it will be the school tournament. At that time, although Lu Feng's strength will definitely not be able to compete for the final championship, he can still help the Federal University maintain its reputation. Therefore, Zhong Ling really wanted to know Lu Feng's approximate strength. This time, Lu Feng could not continue to hide it. He pondered for a moment and said, "Teacher Zhong, I'm very strong, right? Really strong. In the class, there should be no one who can be my opponent." Lu Feng said that he was very strong. This was already the second time. In a short minute, Lu Feng said that he was very strong twice in a row. This was already a kind of confidence in his own strength. Naturally, Zhong Ling could hear the confidence in his voice. She smiled gently and slowly nodded. "In that case, in the student selection in a month, I hope you can help our class fight for glory." Lu Feng nodded his head gently. At this time, Zhong Ling had already turned around and left. Looking at her back as she left, Lu Feng smiled gently and slowly muttered to himself, "I am really very strong, very strong." Zhong Ling only heard Lu Feng's words, saying that he was stronger than everyone in the class, but she did not hear the real meaning hidden by Lu Feng. He was talking about the class. And this class also included Zhong Ling's. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.